Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids, and welcome to Season 4 and episode number 619 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Monday, April 7th, 2025, and it looks like it's going to be a gorgeous day here at the Beaver Lodge. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A. And with me, as always, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. We've got a very, very, very packed show for you today. One narrative that we're going to follow, but really just a flurry of tidbits about a whole bunch of different stuff this weekend. But before we get into it, Mr. Grizzly, how is your mental health today, sir?
In all things being equal, I'd say pretty good. I'm just a little tired. Again, feeling hungover for no reason. So, yeah, it's just exhaustion. I think it's because I fell asleep on the couch at 9:30 last night, and I woke up in a puddle of sweat. Went into my bedroom, peeled off my clothes, and climbed into bed. It's, just dehydrated more than anything else. So I had a big glass of water. Now I got a mug of coffee, so I should feel better eventually.
Eventually. Yeah, again, same thing. Woke up with that hangover feeling, which is really weird because I had not had a drop of alcohol yesterday, and I was in bed before 10:30. I should have popped out of bed like I was toasted a toaster this morning. Hello. I was like, oh. So same thing. Mug of water today. No OJ, no smoothie, no hot chocolate. Just some good quality H2O.
That's some high quality H2O.
Yes. Make sure that
Bobby Boucher.
Yeah, Bobby Boucher. Make sure that the brain also stays moist.
Well,
because dehydrated brain isn't great. All right. Get some
no, it's not great.
A few things for you here. The first one, just a little bit of international news because we had been talking about this. The president, I think it was, of South Korea, if you remember, one day out of the blue in the middle of the night had just declared the equivalent of martial law, which didn't go over very well. He had done that because he was having trouble getting his agenda through. And I guess rather than working with other political parties and making some concessions, he just decided martial law was easier. So, yeah, that didn't work out very well for him. And turns out that there was an attempt to impeach him, which passed in terms of vote, but apparently that needs to be also sanctioned by the courts. So that happened on Friday. South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol was ousted by the Constitutional Court, ushering in an election after it upheld Parliament's impeachment over his imposition of martial law that sparked the nation's worst political crisis in decades. The unanimous ruling capped months of political turmoil. The decision now sets in motion a race to elect the next president within 60 days as required by the Constitution. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo will stay on as acting president until a new leader is sworn in. I don't know if you have the clip there, Mr. Grizzly. This is the judge reading the decision.
피청구인을 파면함으로써 얻는 헌법 수호의 이익이 대통령 파면에 따르는 국가적 손실을 압도할 정도로 크다고 인정됩니다. 이에 재판관 전원의 일치된 의견으로 주문을 선고합니다. 탄핵 사건이므로 선고 시각을 확인하겠습니다. 지금 시각은 오전 11시 22분입니다. 주문, 피청구인 대통령 윤석열을 파면한다.
Yes, sorry. Apologies for that.
That was really loud.
Yeah, that's how much the people were actually. Okay, we could stop it there. We're actually happy. At least those.
Clearly.
I mean, there were image afterwards of those who supported him, just sort of like, oh. But yeah, he's gone. For those, of course, who do not speak Korean, like me, for example. In this case, the judge said the benefit gained by dismissing the respondent overwhelmingly outweighs. Sorry, pardon me here. Sorry, choking here. Overwhelmingly outweighs the national losses resulting from the president's impeachment. Therefore, I issue the ruling with a unanimous opinion. Because this is an impeachment case, I will confirm the time of the verdict. Reminds you a little bit of a hospital setting, time of death. It is 11:22 a.m. Order respondent President Yoon Suk Yeol is impeached. And
now, their impeachment seems to have some weight because that removes him from office, correct?
I believe so.
Because Trump was impeached, what, twice or 3 times? I can't remember.
Yes.
And still stayed in office, so it's kind of empty.
Well, Trump was, when they say Trump was impeached in that he went through the process, but the process was never successful.
In removing him.
Yes. Yoon Suk Yeol, the process was was successful. They actually voted in the legislature to remove him, unlike Trump, they did not. But in the United States, if the legislature had voted to remove him, that would have been the end of it there. In South Korea, it has to go through court as well and be approved. So it seems it was approved by the court. So it doesn't get any more official than that. He's gone. No. And now we're going to see whether or not there's going to be criminal charges laid and whether or not he ends up going to jail as a result. But he's gone. So again, Brazil can do it. France can do it. South Korea can do it. United States.
What you waiting for?
People are giving you the example. It can be done. You can remove a leader. All right. Other things. This update was as of Saturday, so I don't know how things have improved since, but tens of thousands of homes and businesses are still without power in parts of Ontario after last weekend's severe ice storm. Hydro One, the province's largest electricity provider, says that more than 4,000 crew members are working to restore power, but those efforts could be slowed down with more rain and localized flooding in the forecast. Power outages are expected to continue into next week and could last even longer for those in remote areas. I haven't heard anything whether or not there were more outages or any outages in Quebec or in Atlantic Canada and the Maritimes, Newfoundland, with regard to the storm. Nothing too much made the national news, so I'm hoping it went by fast without too much devastation for people. But if there was anything, please let us know. Nothing came through in the national news. Over the weekend as well, on I think it was on Friday night, if I'm not mistaken, there was a lockdown in Parliament.
That was Saturday. That was Saturday.
It was Saturday?
Saturday afternoon, around
Saturday
2 p.m.
afternoon.
it happened. I was out of town.
Yeah.
Um,
So, a little frightening because, one day ago was lockdown had been declared at the East Block on Parliament Hill. And it
Well,
seems,
let's qualify the frightening statement there.
yes,
Okay. Let's qualify it. Yes, when this happens, it is frightening.
yes,
East Block is a building that is empty and is under construction, and the house
yes,
is not sitting, and it was a Saturday.
yes,
So, like, if you're trying to
yes,
prove a point, you pick the worst possible time, dude.
yeah, indeed. Fortunately, no one was hurt. A 31-year-old man has been charged with multiple offenses. In a news release sent Sunday morning, the Ottawa Police Service said the man entered the security screening area of the East Block Parliament around 2:40 on Saturday and began making threats to the safety of those inside. Quote, the man was isolated to the security screening area, and the Parliamentary Protective Service and the OPS attended to facilitate an evacuation of the building, surrounding area, the release said. According to officers, several packages were found in the area which were searched and cleared. Nobody was injured, and no explosives, weapons, or hazardous materials were found on the man. Quote, after hours of negotiations, the man surrendered peacefully to the police and was arrested on the scene. The man, who was not named in the release, has been charged with a breach of probation, public mischief, and uttering threats to cause property damage. Police initially released a warning Saturday afternoon telling anyone in the East Block, which houses parliamentary offices, to seek shelter in the nearest room, close and lock all doors, and hide. The building was then evacuated as police temporarily shut down a significant stretch of Wellington Street in front of Parliament Hill, blocking traffic and pedestrians. Hours after the lockdown began, police extended the exclusion zone from Wellington Street 1 block back to Spark Street. Ottawa police also brought in specialized units, including at least one K9 unit and explosives units. 2 bomb disposal unit robots were seen in front of Center Block. A government webpage says the East Block houses the offices of senators and their staff, but there's little activity on the Hill because Parliament is dissolved for the ongoing federal election. The same webpage says the building once held the offices of Sir John A. Macdonald and Sir Georges Cartier, and that it still contains, quote, faithful recreations of the offices of its famous occupants from the 19th century. So, all's well that ends well in the end, but a little bit of drama. And that was reporting from Benjamin Lopez-Stephen of CBC here that I read into the record.
And we don't know what the reasoning for this was. There was no
Nope.
demands. There was not, like, we don't know what it was all about.
It could just be a mental health issue. Like,
I think it may have been.
just the other day we were taking the O train in Ottawa, and there was a guy on the platform, and then all of a sudden it was like the train is not coming, and then we hear this message: if you are on the tracks, get off the tracks. You are in danger. And I'm thinking, like, oh, that's a really odd message to say, but we are downtown Ottawa, and there's a homeless issue, and there's an addiction issue, and the light rail is just one step down. It's like just taking a step, like from your stairs down into it. So it's not like the Montreal subway or like where you have to go really down to get into the track.
No,
yeah,
they're
so it's very easy to just step down if you're disoriented or.
That's the thing about light rail. It's a very low platform, right? So I mean, honestly, it's a step to the tracks.
Yeah.
It's not like if you've been to the subway in New York City or Montreal or Toronto, it's about almost a meter or a meter and a half drop.
Right.
Here it's like maybe 60 centimeters.
Yeah. So it seems that somebody just decided that they were going to walk to the next station along the tracks. And then, they found the person eventually and, secured him and made sure that they got him to rescue. And turns out that it was indeed a mental health issue. So this could be the same thing.
Well, I would think so, because if you were trying to strategically plan some sort of terrorist attack during a campaign on a Saturday in a building that is empty for construction purposes on a Saturday.
After Parliament is not in session.
Parliament's not sitting because any leader, they're not even here. They're all campaigning in other parts of the country. So I'm thinking it's probably a mental health issue and less to do with anything terrorist or protest-wise. But I could be wrong. But
that would be my assumption as well, based on the facts that we know at the moment. A couple of other notes. If anybody remembers the name Ruth Ellen Brosseau, she was the candidate that earned a seat in Quebec during the Orange Crush when Jack Layton came along. They had nicknamed her Vegas because apparently during the campaign she was vacationing in Las Vegas at some point
Yes.
because she never really expected she would have a chance and then ended up winning. But it turns out that even though her French wasn't really great, she brushed up on her French and actually did very, very good work as a constituency MP and got reelected the following election. Then
They
lost
liked her.
in the subsequent one. Well, it seems that she's back and she's running again
Good for
for
her.
the
And
NDP.
at the time, so Vegas, she was a bartender at Oliver's at Carleton University. A
Mhm.
bartender or a server, I can't remember which, but I think somebody tried to call her bartender Barbie because,
Hmm.
let's diminish women every chance we get.
Yes.
Opposite politics.
Yep. So, but like I said, she turned out to be an extremely good constituency MP who took her work seriously and got reelected
And
once.
she was the one at the center of Elbowgate.
Yes, as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she's running again for the NDP. Not sure how well that will work for her this time, given that the NDP since then has been reduced to basically one seat in the province of Quebec. It's Mr. Boulris, who's very, very good, but it even doesn't look like he's going to retain it this time around.
Well, like you said, she was a good MP, and they
Yes,
did like her a
she
lot.
deserves votes.
Yeah. So who knows, right? If she's running in the same riding, there's a good chance she could get back in again.
Mhm.
And here's the thing, even though people are going to strategically vote, sometimes, look, we can elect this MP here, and it's not going to detrimentally affect the strategy that we're going for,
Mhm.
right?
Yep, indeed. Former Liberal Justice Minister Irwin Cotler, who, of course, we found out, I think, some point last year, had been targeted by Iranian officials in terms of potentially being an extrajudicial target. Because Irwin Cotler is a very, very, very well-known, internationally renowned human rights defender. It seems that he has endorsed officially the Bloc Québécois Alexis Brunel-Duceppe as a candidate in his riding. Said, yep, regardless of political leanings, when it comes to this particular issue with regard to human rights, he gets it. He gets it really well. Had introduced a private member's bill with regard to deal with that. And Irwin Cotler says, you got to, yes. He may believe in different things on the issue of Canadian unity, but when it comes to this type of stuff, he's got it down, and therefore he has my endorsement.
Well,
So there you go.
I can accept that.
Yep,
I can
cross
accept
party
that,
lines.
right? Yeah.
Well, yeah. Again, right? Everybody makes their endorsement based on issues that are of concern to them.
Of course.
Right? So he basically said in a social media post that Brunel Duceppe, quote, has been an outstanding member of parliament, a leading voice for the struggle for human rights domestically and internationally, and one who works across party lines in search of the common good. His candidacy deserves our support, regardless of political affiliation. So there you go. Brunel Duceppe was first elected in the riding of Lac-Saint-Jean in 2019 and won his second race in 2021. Before Parliament was dissolved in late March, Brunel Duceppe was the Bloc's citizen and immigration critic. He responded that the Cotler's endorsement warms my heart. The two men share some history. In November 2024, Cotler was informed by the RCMP that police had foiled an Iranian plot to kill him. The former Liberal minister told Radio-Canada at the time he had been under police protection for over a year. After the news came out, Brunel Duceppe told the House of Commons his party will never accept that anyone's life should be endangered over their opinions. Quote, we unreservedly condemn the death threats against Mr. Cotler, and we condemn the growing temptation of foreign powers to commit political assassinations on Canadian and Quebec soil. Mr. Cotler, you are not alone. Oddly, well, not oddly, but interestingly, for those of you who are wondering, Brunel Duceppe is indeed the son of former Bloc leader Gilles Duceppe. You're just wondering, Duceppe, I wonder. Yes, he is. And he also introduced a motion to the House asking all MPs to condemn the death threats against Cotler and recognize his work to promote human rights. The motion was accepted by unanimous consent. So, and that's what justifies here Mr. Cotler's endorsement. Also, for those who have been watching, some former party leaders were out campaigning on behalf of others. We had Alexa McDonough, former NDP leader, helping with the campaign in Halifax, and Trudeau Justin, of course, because it would be hard for the father to come back and help campaign.
Been gone for 25 years.
Be a little messy. Trudeau was seen campaigning in his former riding of Papineau with the
Yes,
new
because
candidate.
he's completely out of politics now.
Yep.
When he resigned, he didn't just resign from the party and the position, or from the position of prime minister. He resigned altogether. He's out of politics.
He's out of politics now. So as a citizen, is helping the next candidate in his own. Again, listen, this guy has earned it.
Yeah,
He could like just like say, I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to skip this one. Just put my hands behind my head and my feet up on the on the coffee table, and you guys run it out. And he's out there in his district campaigning. That's how you know we had a good one.
Well,
doesn't leave the time behind. Doesn't leave the team behind.
Can walk away, completely avoid it altogether, and chose not to, because he knows how important this election is to this country.
Yep. And finally, in the sort of little tidbits, because we hadn't talked about it, but there was that whole brouhaha about the TVA debate, and everybody was wondering, I was like, well, will there be another opportunity, that type of stuff? Well, it turns out that there was one all along. Radio-Canada had a show called Cinq chefs, une élection, 5 leaders, 1 election. And it's basically an interview type show where they have everybody come in. They have a 3 journalist panel, and they take each of the leaders one by one, give them some time, and ask them the questions. Now, unfortunately, it was not equal time for everyone, and the
It was
NDP,
only 2 hours.
Yeah, but the NDP and the Green leader really got squeezed. Like the Liberal leader got about half an hour, and the Conservative leader got about half an hour, and the Bloc leader got about 22 minutes, and then the NDP guy got about 16, and then the Green guy maybe got about 9.
So, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So it goes back and forth. But for those of you who like information, some people prefer these formats more than debates because it's a panel of 3 journalists who are grilling, and then it's one-on-one, so there's no crosstalk with other.
I like that format. I do. Because of that fact, you're not going to get somebody who's just going to interrupt or talk longer than they're supposed to, or speak over, and how many times have we seen debates where it's like, oh, moderator, do your goddamn job, mute that son of a bitch's mic.
Right. And also sort of like, global warming was a very, very difficult problem. Some people say intractable. Tell me, what are your plans and policies to help address it? You've got 45 seconds.
Excuse me? Well, and then, of course, you'll get the response from a lot of people. Well, thank you for that question. That is a very good question. It was one that I feel is very important, and we absolutely must address this problem because it is a global scale problem. If we don't address it, we will have bigger issues in the near future. So our government is putting together a plan, and in that, you can waste your whole time and never say a damn thing.
Exactly. So this was more substantive. There were some takeaways from this. Now, the first thing, when it comes to this, everybody's talking about quality of French. We really need to get over that for now.
Well, he says his French is far from perfect, right?
Well, listen, he says it. Everybody knows it. But can he be understood? For the most part, yes. All right. It takes effort, yes. But for the most part, yes, it can be understood. Does it appear to be mattering to the Québécois? No. Every public opinion survey seems to show it doesn't seem to be mattering. Now, admittedly, the 3 panelists were more patient, more indulgent with Carney, seeing how much effort he is placing. Also, perhaps the fact that it's, he's the prime minister and it's their first time questioning him one-on-one.
And again, you just said the magic word there, the effort he's putting into it, which 40 years ago, any effort and you would have got ridiculed for. Oftentimes, I know, because I lived that experience. They made fun of me for my French. It's not like that anymore.
Right.
It has changed with the times. And I find most people in the province, la belle province, especially if you travel abroad and you go to France or any country that speaks French, any effort you put in is greatly appreciated. And I'm finding that is very much what is taking place in the province of Quebec these days and has been for a few years now.
Yes.
Because I think they realize, people realize they are part of a bigger picture, the global picture, number one. Number two, the advent of everybody having a high-speed internet connection. Well, not everybody, but the vast majority of the
Yeah.
population having access to a high-speed internet connection and realizing how much bigger the world really is. There was a time when somebody like René Lévesque, as an example, or Jacques Parizeau, were able to keep their people to a degree in the dark.
hmm
That time is long gone.
Yes.
Long gone. I mean, the Conservatives are still trying to keep Canadians in the dark
I
by
know.
lying to us. And it's like, you just said that. I have it right here in 4K high definition.
I know. I can rewind and play it again and again. So yes, they were being indulgent, more patient, more definitely. There's no doubt there, right? You're gonna say, oh, well, they took it easy on him. Yeah. However, from the beginning of the campaign till now, as a Kit just noticed, his French has improved incredibly. Now, this caveat here, I've said it before on the show once, but in case we missed it, Carney's French, during the time he was governor of the Bank of Canada and governor of the Bank of England, was pretty good. Right? Now, he probably had to use it a little less as governor of the Bank of England, but I'm sure he had to use it somewhat because he's in Europe and there's France and there's Belgium and right, Luxembourg and all these other places where French is spoken, and he has to deal with them. But in Canada, he had to do it much more often, clearly. So he's lost a lot of it, but he's had it and he's getting it back. And you can tell that that's true by the rate at which it is coming back. Right. So you can tell that he did have it. You can tell that he's making an effort. And the thing is, as well, is that you have Pierre, who's more comfortable in French. And when you're comparing both of them, because Pierre makes plenty of errors as well. But as a francophone, you can tell when someone's speaking who has it in their heart and who just has it in their throat.
Right.
All right. And from the answers, Carney was trying to give substantive, meaningful answers using elevated language that would respect the audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not everything came to him. But he made the point of saying, like this, like, I understand a lot, right? And I think a lot of people who have different language, different proficiencies in different languages, right? For example, if I'm reading Italian, if somebody's talking to me, I can't understand a lot of it because it goes fast. But if I'm reading it, I can sometimes get the gist. They're talking about a bank robbery that happened on Saturday in this town here. It's like, yeah, but I don't have all the color and texture of the article, but I can read an article and I can kind of pick up some elements there. He understands more than he can speak. And he understands it much faster than he can get it out when he's speaking. And you could tell because he was actually answering the questions.
Right.
Right? Pierre has more ease, but he has a lot of problems. If you're a francophone and like you're one of those purists who's like, ooh, that's that word, ooh, that pronunciation, there's a lot of that too if you wanted to get picky. But he doesn't. Somewhere during the exchange, the journalists started speaking slower and using simpler words with him because they couldn't tell if he actually understood the question because he wasn't answering them.
Interesting.
Like one time he was asked specifically, directly, what is it about you? Given that you have like some certain policies that are similar, what is it about you? What do you bring to the table that would make you the better person to deal with Trump than Carney? And then he goes into economic stuff like this. He did not talk about himself at all in the answer.
Well, I mean,
when you're asked a question about you and you cannot talk about yourself, and this is not the first time we've noticed that during this campaign, that he sidesteps the opportunity to talk about himself. What did you bring? What qualities do you have? What knowledge? What are your, he'll just start talking about the other person. So when you're asking someone a question, like formulating a question that way, and they start talking about this, you ask it again a little more slowly. So
Well, how many times have we seen him being interviewed on Radio Canada, and he has, been directly confronted by the interviewer, say, "But sir, what you're saying is not true. Please answer the question."
Yeah.
That what you're saying is, it's like he's done this before. This is his raison d'être. He does not answer questions.
There's also that did not come up as much in that way. But sometimes they would reformulate questions or like refocus on an element of a question that they asked that he spoke around and around. So that's about the stuff with the French. So Carney it took him time to get answers out, but he's like looking for words and trying to get the right concept and whatnot.
Right.
Whereas Pierre was using a lot of words to make lists, right? Lists of things that were wrong with the other people, lists of grievances, lists of just data. 2 million people are going to food banks. This is going to that, this goes like, but not speaking about what he has planned or about himself. So both exchanges were at times odd and awkward in French with both of them. But in Carney's case, it's really clear that it's because he's struggling with the language and trying to speak elevated to respect the audience. And with Poilièvre, he just seems to be there for the airtime. Also, 4 of the 5 leaders showed up in person to be in the studio with the journalists, but Pierre participated through remote distance because, well, he had a campaign event and tried to squeeze it in. And maybe that explains why it is that he answered a lot of questions with his campaign stump speech lines, because he was warmed up for what he was doing that evening. And as we know, Pierre doesn't work very well without a script.
No, he doesn't. He's incapable of thinking on his feet, as evidenced by some responses to questions recently where he just stumbled and mumbled and didn't answer the question at all and just went back to blaming everything on the former prime minister. So
when you're asking who has French in the heart, when you're saying like who will defend French culture, who will defend French, I think Carney will. It's like, listen, it helps to have someone who speaks it very well when you're asking who will defend French. But the thing is, if you're asking Carney about French, for him, he sees it as an intrinsic part of the Canadian identity. There is no Canadian identity without a French-Canadian identity.
No, there isn't. And if you travel globally, you will know that.
Yes, and therefore he will defend it and he protects it. You feel that he has that in his heart. He was asked point blank on a scale from 1 to 10, how do you rate your French? He says a 6. And Chantal Hébert actually said, you know what? It's like if somebody would ask me that, that's probably the only number I could have settled on as well for him, a 6. So good to know that he's aware. But they asked him where it is do you think you're going to be at the end of after your first year, your first term, should you win? He said, I should be back to about an 8 or a 9.
Practice makes better.
Practice makes better. So it's those types of answers, right? Because he could have sat there and said, well, I'm probably at a 7 or 8. And it's like, a lot of us went like this. 6, yes, because he's looking for words, whatnot. And they're not flowing fast. But the vocabulary that he has in French, when he picks up those, when he has the time, is very good. It's an elevated vocabulary. All his economic jargon, he does know it in French. Right. So it just, like I said, it just takes some time for it to get to roll off the tongue. So yeah, I would say 6 is a fair assessment. I would be a little more generous and maybe even say 7, because sometimes he gets on a roll a little bit. But then, there were moments in that interview where they were asking questions for clarification and whatnot, and he was like asking, and like the exchange back and forth kind of went a little weird. And it's like, so that's it. Okay, but you can tell, right? Because if you're using the words and you're not trying to answer like this, and if you don't master the words, but you're using all the ones you can to try to answer, the person who doesn't know the words like this is doing better.
Well, I don't know if you want to address this comment here from Noah. It says, you will have no French identity once the Liberal get another round of mass immigration. Good luck. I don't know. Well, Noah, you're not informed here, because Quebec brings in a lot of immigrants, and the vast majority of which are French speakers.
Yes, Quebec has a lot of control over its immigration policy. And again, respectfully, 50 years living in this country, and this is the time of my life where the greatest number of people in Canada actually understand and appreciate and want to participate in the spread of French. We have again, the next federal leaders debate that we have in French is going to be the one with the highest level of French in Canadian history. All 5 leaders will be able to speak and be understood. Compare and contrast with the last 2 provincial elections in Ontario, where there was not a French debate with the leaders. They had to send some representatives for discussion. So I do not believe that as a francophone outside Quebec, who learned almost the entirety of his French outside Quebec, and still lives in French outside Quebec.
Yes.
At a time when, because we're all globally connected, right? Music. Just think of music. How many of us listen to songs in other languages that we do not understand, but it's got a good beat, it's got a good rhythm, the person seems to be singing well, then it seems to be melodious, and we like it.
Du hast mich.
Right? Or even like the internet trend with Babaras Rubababar, like the German rap.
That
was a tongue twister.
You're saying German rap. You want to know something interesting? Ooh, Daddy Cool by Boney M.
Oh, yes.
That's a German song.
Yes.
By a German band, by a German producer who did all the vocals for Boney.
I mean, yeah. We just talked the other day about the Junos, about like the South Asian category. Languages are spreading. People are spreading. I really, really don't. I believe that the global trend is literally the opposite.
Well, to quote every teenage boy that was ever on American Bandstand, well, it's got a good beat and you can dance to it.
And I don't care what language they're singing in.
It's irrelevant. I mean, it's irrelevant to the point where people our age are looking at lyrics that were written in the 60s and 70s for the first time. We knew the chorus. That was it. We really didn't know the rest of the words.
It's like don't bore us, get to the chorus.
About 3 or 4 years ago, somebody picked apart Brown Sugar by the Rolling Stones. And it was like, I said, even I, who have been humming along to that song for decades, never paid attention to what he was actually saying before. Look it up for yourself. I'm not going to rehash it here right now. But trust me, look it up for yourself. You'll be like this.
Yes. Well, and as the one we keep on saying all the time, right? It's like, if you actually understood the words to Hallelujah, you wouldn't be singing it at Christmas.
Or at a funeral.
Yes.
Don't.
Unless a very specific activity was happening.
It's not appropriate to play that at a funeral. And I explained that to a friend of mine when she said, well, my mom loved that song. We'd like to play it at the funeral. But the funeral director said, oh, no, we're not playing that. I said, no, do not play that. Here's why. I explained it to her. She's like, oh, my God. I'm like, yeah, you don't play that there. That's not a good. And I love how you always got like these. I don't know if you've ever seen some of these. I'm not choir, but you'll see Christian choirs singing Hallelujah. And I'm like, if they only knew. If they only knew.
Oh.
Or like a prayer.
Yes.
They're about the same thing, by the way.
So they called it La Petite Mort in French for a reason.
Yes, the
little death. So as we mentioned, the time set aside for the NDP and the Greens was too short. And for the bloc, I have to and the NDP, no big surprises in terms of what they said, and both performed very well. Jagmeet Singh is the leader with the third best quality French right now. So it's Blanchet, Pedneau from the Greens, then Singh, then Poilièvre, then Carney. and Carney is a 6 out of 10. So.
Linda, those are exactly the songs I'd want at my funeral. That's going to be that'd be a good
Linda?
That'd be a good time. That'd be a good time.
And that's why we love you. You can sit next to me right here. Just sit right there. So a lot of people prefer this format. Now, the one other thing that might be an issue for Pierre is that he was asked specifically about foreign aid money. And again, repeated his claim that Canada gives money to dictators and terrorists and international organizations. Now, international organizations, yes, we do. We do give money through multilateral organizations like the UN and UNESCO and all that, all the various agencies, UNICEF, UNESCO, all that, and other groups like this, multilateral organizations, established non-for-profits, non-government organizations, that type of stuff. So he was pressed by the journalists to ask about, to be more precise about his claims that Canada gives foreign aid to dictators and terrorists. We do not. And in that answer, he declared UNRWA as being a terrorist organization. Now, UNRWA has had a long history of people suspecting that there are people that do have links to terrorist groups that are sometimes working for them. And that happened lately with one of the bombings of, I think, foreign aid convoys that were trying to bring some help. But when that was discovered, UNRWA launched a full investigation, found people, kicked them out, and all that kind of stuff. So there's a difference between being a terrorist organization that and living in that part of the world and being an organization that sometimes, some people tend to infiltrate, that type of stuff. This could become a campaign issue because about 5% of the Canadian population is Muslim.
Yes.
And UNRWA is the only organization that has the okay to distribute aid in Palestine.
Right.
So he's basically saying that there's no way to give aid to Palestinians without supporting terrorists, so therefore we should not, which I'm not sure what that ends up, I mean, I have a good idea how that ends up for the Palestinians. So that there's being all in on Israel, and then there's being all in on Israel to the point where you're advocating genocide by less than benign neglect.
Yes. Well, how many times has their water supply been cut off?
Yeah.
That's murder.
Yeah.
That's 2 days without water, you're dead.
Yeah.
2 days. So that's murder.
Yeah. I'm not sure if this comment will be picked up upon again because it's been said in French. But it should be an issue. It really should be. So there you go. That's the cinq chefs une élection. And again, because that was held, it sort of really makes. I can understand now why the TVA debate thing is kind of moot, because if there was a face à face TVA and then cinq chefs une élection and a French debate, and then in English there was only just an English debate. It would be nice if this format was taken up somewhere in English.
I would like to see it.
5 one-on-one interviews like this. They're aired back to back to back to back.
Oh, yeah. Do you really think, though, that Pierre Poilièvre is going to sit in front of the CBC or CTV or Canadian Press?
Nope.
He won't. He won't take questions from them.
Like I said, he phoned this one in, right? Literally. He couldn't even bother to show up in person, show them the respect.
He doesn't care.
Right? I mean, he wasn't that far away.
He doesn't care. He doesn't give a shit.
Kingston, Toronto area. The event was in Montreal. He could have foregone one rally one night. He could have gone in the afternoon and pre-taped it.
Yeah.
Right? He just couldn't. He just didn't care enough to go. To go. And that's going to land too.
Oh, yes.
Because he was the only one. If 2 or 3 had done it, that was one. But he was the only one. Now, at the end of he did say, the next time in person, okay? And I will keep that promise. Now, to give Pierre credit, because I don't want to poo-poo credit on Pierre all the time, there was one answer that he gave that was really, really good. They asked him about Bill 21, because Pierre's position seems to be in Quebec as well. Let the provinces do what they want. So he's that way with Bill 96. He has no problem with language like Starbucks having to put up signs that says Starbucks Cafe rather than Starbucks Coffee or whatnot on there.
Cafe Starbucks.
Yeah, so he doesn't have any problems with that. But he is having some problems with Bill 21, which is the one that has to do with ostentatious religious symbols and secularism. And he too is saying, Mark Carney, when he's asked about that, he says, "I have no problem with wanting to protect the language. I have the problem with the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause in bills." Like just start. And Blanchette was asked about that. He says, "Well, I mean, I have no problem with that whatsoever."
Yeah.
It's like René Lévesque when he was, prime minister of Quebec, he put the notwithstanding clause on absolutely everything,
Yes.
everything, no matter what. So I have no problem with that. So that's Mark Carney's thing. He's trying to not make it about a language, trying to make it a process issue. With Poilièvre, he just turned around and said, "Well, it's like." And they're asking it. He goes, "I have a problem with that." And says, "Well, even like for people with positions in authority, because that seems to be the distinction that Quebec is making. If you're in a position of authority, like a judge or a police officer or whatnot, you can't have that because the clothes you wear makes it such that you've got, religious supremacy in your heart. But if you just take off the turban, then everything's fine. If you've got religious supremacy in your heart, whether you're wearing the turban or not, it doesn't really matter. You're going to behave in such a way, right? And the fact that you're wearing it doesn't. But for them, that's the thing." And like Pierre's going, "Well, yeah, but on my personal security detail, like there's an RCMP officer who has a turban. What am I going to tell him? Sorry, you can't have your job
Yes, exactly.
because you got one." It's like you're protecting, you're defending my life. You're putting like this. Clearly, this person is not letting the fact that they subscribe to a religion that is different from mine stop him from doing his job appropriately to protecting me. So I'm sorry, it's just, I respect your thing, but I can't support that. You know what? That's actually a solid answer.
Yeah. Well,
So-
credit where credit's due. Broken
Give him
clock.
credit like this. But the interview was bad.
Mm.
Was bad overall. And bad because he just would not engage. Really, he just would not engage in a meaningful level.
That's surprise, though, is it? Are you
No,
surprised?
not
by that?
not really. Not really. But it was just like, come on, man.
Mhm.
Now, they asked in-depth, pointed questions, that showed that they were researched and they knew their stuff, and you could tell that if you were BSing on the first one, they had the follow-up next. It's like, oh yeah, really? Let's go. So, not an easy interview as well. The journalists that were there, I have to commend them. The only thing, only reproach that I have for the journalists is that Jonathan Pedneau from the Greens at the end was being asked about fiscal stuff. And because Greens are different, they do things differently. And so there's a lot of people that turn around and say, well, that's not serious or that's not possible. And so, yeah, it is actually if you do it this way, but it's just a different way. And people are not used to it. And one of the journalists at the end was asking them like quickly about this. And they go, yeah, but that's a lot of people are saying that that's ridiculous and that can't happen like this. And she did that final editorial comment as the music was playing and credits were rolling on the back, and the show ended like that without him having an opportunity to respond to that at all. That's pretty much a low blow. Like this, as shows. So let's finish with your costing. Like a lot of people says that that's not really realistic. Okay, we got to go. Do. You don't do that to a guest. So everything from the journalist was absolutely perfect until that one last little moment right at the end. Because where Jean and Jonathan Pedneau got screwed. There's no other way to call it. He got screwed.
Yeah, well, it's not surprising to me at all.
Yeah, the Greens, they get very little respect. I mean, the fact that he just got 9 minutes when everybody else got over 10 to start with is a sign. But then they leave the ending lasting impression being that. Yeah, not great. He was done dirty a little bit there. So that's a lot of the sort of tidbits. The polling stuff. A little movement, not a lot, but a little bit of movement. The CBC poll tracker is the one that's showing the best results for the Liberals at the moment. They see some gains over the course of the weekend, a little bit of a tightening yesterday, but Liberals with a 6.5 point lead. Their seat count now at 203, which is the highest it's been under the poll tracker, and the Conservatives at 118, the Bloc Québécois at 17, New Democrats at 4, Greens at 1. With 338 Canada, they are starting to get a bit of a wider margin. They had the narrowest margin, but over the weekend, their margin between both major parties increased to 7%, so starting to match what we've seen in other aggregators, with, again, the Liberals leading in every province or territory except for Alberta and Saskatchewan. And the seat count, having the best seat count so far from 338 with regard to the election for the Liberals, sitting at 195 now, with the Conservatives at 122, the Bloc at 16, the NDP at 9, and the Greens with 1. And then finally, if we are looking at polling Canada, again, a slight narrowing of the polls that they're seeing. They had 2 new polls come in on the 6th, Abacus showing them tied again, Ipsos showing a lead of 12 for the Liberals, Main Street showing a lead of 2, Liaison a lead of 5, and Nanos a lead of 6. So again, Abacus and Innovative, both being outliers on showing that the race is closer than everybody else is there. And with polling Canada, they also have a 7-point lead nationally for the Liberals, 44-37, with the NDP at 9, the Bloc at 6, the Greens at 2.7, and the People's Party at 1.8.
Wow, that's higher than I thought.
Yes, well, actually, People Party is going down. Actually, they've been in the 2s pretty much solid. So I would suspect that at some point, Pierre's less than stellar performance might start driving some votes back, but that has not been the case yet.
Well, the most I've heard from Maxime Bernier was on April Fool's Day.
Yeah.
I've basically not seen him during this campaign.
April Fool's Day and one other time. I've only seen his name mentioned twice.
Yeah.
So I don't know where he is. And then with polling Canada, we see 202 for Liberals, 121 for the Conservatives, 17 for the Bloc, 3 for the NDP, and 0 for the Greens in this one. So that's where things are standing at the moment. And, well, when we left last week, we were talking about some candidate issues, because a lot of them were dropping like flies.
They've now dropped, what, 5?
5 now.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have to bring in the count. It's like,
Well,
Sesame
yeah.
Street, can we borrow that guy? 5 conservative bozos. I love to count.
We have the best vetting process. See how we gotten rid of these because we vetted them. If you vetted them, they would not have been candidates.
Yeah. So it would seem that there have been a couple of others, and not all conservatives. The first one, and this is our good friend David Kleiman-Haga from Alberta who wrote it, but there's a former Edmonton Ellerslie NDP MLA, Rod Loyola, who was briefly the federal Liberal candidate in Edmonton Gateway. Well, he's been given the boot. So according to David here, if vetting federal political candidates was as strict in 2004 as it needs to be today, would Pierre Poilièvre have made the cut as a candidate? I wonder. Since candidate vetting by national political parties is as rigorous as it is in this age of social media, where any injudicious thing we say is likely to live online forever, is the quality of the candidates we're getting better or worse? I'm not confident I know the answer to either question, but they're both worth asking. I do know that if you're ever expressed a controversial opinion on social media, or God help you in a TikTok video or equivalent, you probably shouldn't be thinking about running for parliament. The parties won't want you with good reason, even if they happen to quietly agree with you. This is because your opinion is bound to show up in the National Post or some other news organization with a political agenda, which nowadays is just about all of them. This is especially good advice, by the way, if you've already got a job that you won't necessarily get back if you quit to run for office, as Rod Loyola discovered to his dismay last week after he'd resigned his seat as the NDP MLA for Edmonton Ellerslie to run for the Liberals in the new Edmonton Gateway federal riding. That was before Mr. Loyola was outed by the Post for having said nice things about Hezbollah and Hamas 16 years ago when he was performing as a rapper at a Say No to NATO rally. The Post must be losing its touch. They didn't wait until it was too late for the Liberals to get Mr. Loyola's name off the ballot before they leaked the news, which up until his resignation from the provincial assembly, someone had presumably been keeping in reserve for the next Alberta election. Thanks to the Post, then the NDP has probably dodged that bullet, although as the past few days have shown, such revelations from history preserved on social media is a problem that can bedevil any political party. Quote, I did not think that an intro at a hip-hop segment 16 years later would get me cancelled after close to a decade of serving as an elected representative at the Legislative Assembly of Alberta, but here we are, Mr. Loyola told the CBC. He now says he will run as an independent, but in any federal election, let alone one like this, that is a plan that will end in tears for the candidate and maybe for a majority of voters too. He'd be wiser just to pack it up and look for a new gig. Then over the past few days, we learned Mark McKenzie, which was a candidate in Windsor-Tecumseh Lakeshore, had to be released because, well, he mused aloud about bringing back public hangings, and maybe that the then Prime Minister would be a good candidate for one. Then we had Stéphane Marquis of the CBC again, a candidate in Laurier-Sainte-Marie, with no reason given, but it seems words through the grapevine afterwards were that he was a very prolific meme sharer, particular memes with, maybe we're just doing a little too much for Ukraine. Those types of memes. So no wonder that the party didn't want to say why it is that they wanted to get rid of him, I guess. Yeah. Then there's Laurence Singh, New Westminster, BC. No explanation at all for that one at the beginning, but turns out that there was something having to do with an assault charge that was stayed, but did not say it. And, well, parties usually have a problem with that. Now it seems that Laurence Singh is not going to go quietly. He is appealing, so that's going to give that one story legs for a couple more days. Yeah,
that's just what they're trying to avoid too. So he's actually
not being helpful.
He's become an agent of chaos in his own party and doesn't even know it.
Yes. And then Don Patel, who we talked about, the CBC candidate in Etobicoke North, for endorsing a social media comment suggesting Canadians critical of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi should be shipped to India, where they could be dealt with. Now, that one is probably just as bad as Paul Chang's, but nobody's going crazy for Don Patel.
Yeah, funny how that works out, huh?
Mm-hmm. And also Mark McKenzie's also is pretty much as bad as Paul Chang's, because both of them end up with people being unalived.
That is exactly what would take place were those things to be followed up on. I have the clip of Pierre.
But apparently conservatives have great vetting.
Yeah, well, pay attention.
Abigail Beeman, CTV News. Your party has dropped 4 candidates in 2 days. How can Canadians be convinced of your vetting process for people you believe are fit to govern this country? And here in Kingston, how does that vetting process extend to Mr. Patterson for his previous connection to a church that supported conversion therapy?
Well, first of all, you omitted from your question that Mr. Patterson renounced conversion therapy years ago. And so the question is not accurate.
Yes, it is.
Secondly,
it is accurate.
Our vetting process is stronger than all the other parties. That's why we have a zero tolerance for anyone who acts unacceptably.
That's not true.
This is the exact opposite of what we saw from Mr. Carney, who tried to keep on as a candidate someone who had asked for his conservative opponent to be handed over.
Let's again clarify that the party leader cannot boot somebody. That has to be up to there's other individuals that would be determine that. Mark Carney can't kick Paul Chang out. He could ask him to step down, but he cannot kick him out. That's the responsibility of others.
I'm not sure about that.
Highlighted. Yeah, that's been highlighted.
It's been highlighted? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. He can't. He doesn't have the right to kick them out. He can ask him to step down, but there are other party individuals within the party that are responsible for that. Yeah.
I guess that's what might be after the nomination is made, because once the nomination is being made, the the leader has to sign off on the nomination papers and can reject someone there. But I guess once they're signed for removal, it's different.
Correct.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
he's trying to tell us he has the best vetting process of all the parties, and yet they've had to kick 5 people out.
They
If
got
you
through.
if you vetted them correctly,
hmm
they never would have been candidates to begin with.
Indeed. Now, given Pierre's particularly stance on vetting when it comes to his own personal security clearance, it really appears that Mr. Poilièvre is someone who believes that vetting happens after someone is nominated or gets the position.
Yeah. Well,
Yay! Great job there, Sparky. Okay. So, but yes, actually selling it. It's like, we have incredible vetting. Now, this is where, and I mentioned when people were wondering, it's like, oh my God, are you like, being too harsh with Paul Chang? Cut him. It's like, this is where having kept him on too long hurts.
Mhm.
Because had the Liberals just cut him, the story of the day would not be, hey, we've got excellent vetting, and people go on. It's like, no. When the Liberals found out about Paul Chang, they cut him right away. You approved all these people. How did they get approved? Would be the question. But since the Liberals hung on to Paul Chang too long, well, it's true the Liberals did that. Like this, yeah. But can we please compare and contrast? Because like they've got 2 that did the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? It's just as bad, and they both got through.
Mhm.
Yes,
We
and
have the best vetting process.
and odds are you probably knew of these things before if you did do any vetting and you approved them anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Apparently, he thinks his vetting process is great, which again should probably, if you're looking to cast him for, if you think that if you've seen the vetting process and you do think his assessment of it is incorrect, maybe you shouldn't vote for it. Because he's the type of person that would say, "Hey, what do you mean? What do you mean there was something wrong with that call? It was a perfect call.
It was a perfect phone call. Mhm.
The most perfect phone call you ever had."
Shall we talk about his riding? And
We could, yes, yes, kids and cubs. These are the list of all the candidates in the riding in which Pierre Poilièvre is trying to defend. You will notice that there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And there's one name that keeps on popping up on the right, in the right column.
Thomas Sushuis. I think I said that correctly.
Yes. He
Officially,
seems to be the campaign coordinator or the whatnot for almost all of these candidates.
well, so as it turns out, I'm reading a note here. It says Thomas and Kieran Sushwitz are the organizers of the pro-proportional representation movement, the longest ballot, in quotes, which is also protesting in Chrystia Freeland's riding. They are both affiliated with the Marxist-Leninist Party of Canada. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if the Marxist-Leninist Party of Canada is actually running candidates this time around, or just investing all their money into doing this. Now, if there was any doubt, because some people were wondering that these longest ballot initiatives were designed specifically to target Liberals and make their lives hell, because they seem to appear in certain by-elections like Toronto St. Paul's, but not in others. They seem to affect certain candidates, but not others. Maybe you want to read that in a little bit there, Mr. Grizzly, what you've got there.
I'm happy to do that. This is, it says, Canadians have not forgotten that let's back it up. This is Marxist-Leninist Party of Canada, longest ballot in Canada's history. Canadians have not forgotten that Justin Trudeau broke his promise to make the 2015 election the last first-past-the-post election. Canadians remain unsatisfied with the archaic and out-of-touch political system, which Justin Trudeau and Erin O'Toole call a democracy. An opportunity every few years to vote for the lesser evil is a far cry from what Canadians deserve. Our democracy is one that is designed to keep the voices of ordinary people out and concentrate on power in the hands of a few. I can't really disagree with that statement.
Yes,
Feel
but
disillusioned with voting for those that don't represent them. Instead of accepting apathy and alienation, we decided to do the opposite and engage directly with our democracy to make ourselves heard. We are now happy to celebrate our success in creating the longest federal ballot seen in this country's 150-year history. We mobilized ordinary Canadians from all walks of life and from a diverse range of political opinions to stand in a single riding at the heart of the country, St. Boniface, St. Vital, Winnipeg. We collected nearly 1,600 individual nomination signatures from local residents who were excited to see regular people stand up for a better democracy. Section 3 of the Charter explicitly grants every Canadian the right to stand for election. There is no reason why we should accept our lot just as voters. We can do more. We believe a democracy in which everyday Canadians have a bigger voice will forever remain a distant dream until we start to exercise our democratic rights to their fullest extent and stand up with our own voices against the politicians who seek to speak on our behalf. Some will call the longest ballot frivolous, inappropriate, or just ballot clutter. We must disagree. There's nothing inappropriate about having a regular Canadian exercising their charter rights and engaging directly in politics. The rules and model of our democracy is determined by the winners of the last election. This is neither fair nor democratic. We have shown what a few people can accomplish, and we will continue to work hard to bear pressure on the administrative and conceptual limits of our electoral system, with the widespread calls for democratic reform are answered. Until the widespread calls for democratic reform are answered. Towards a better democracy, organizer of the longest ballot, Thomas Suschwitz.
Okay, so I do not know what they think they're winning.
It's a protest is all it is.
Yes. I mean, listen, you're allowed to do this. It's fine. We probably need some new laws from Elections Canada that says that each candidate probably has to have their own representative.
I would think.
So that one person cannot do this. Because here's the thing, right? The principle, every Canadian is entitled to run of a certain age. Right? Yes. But you have to have an offer. Go to all of these candidates and ask them what their policy is on Arctic sovereignty.
They have no position on any of that. Well, it's not fair of me to say that. Well, I'm assuming they have no position on that. I could be wrong.
I find it very hard to believe that the entire list of candidates has a full policy plank. Full policy platform.
Yeah.
On all the things that matter, right? This is a protest.
It is a protest, and it's a stupid one.
So you've managed to get on the ballot. You've managed to make it long. You managed to make the count longer and all that kind of stuff. Fine. But what have you actually accomplished? It doesn't move. This presents us an argument against the reforms that you want.
Yes.
What you're doing right now, I see no difference between, being invited as the guest of honor in a parade and stopping the parade like this to get the one-day publicity hit, but then you lose all your new allies. And this. So, but it is happening in Bruce Fanjoy's
writing, which is Carl,
which is Pierre Poilièvre's.
Pierre Poilièvre's writing.
Yes. So, interesting that it always seems to be in writings where they really don't want the Liberal candidate to win. Okay. Stay tuned on that. Now, the Conservatives have had a couple of other problems. On Friday, Pierre was in Montreal making an announcement having to do with intimate partner violence. And on the same day that happened, candidate number 5 was dropped. And you will never guess what for. Mr. Grizzly, if you would like to show the image that I've linked to.
Is it this one right here? Alberta politics?
On the same day candidate 5 dropped. And there's a link to images, right?
Oh, sorry, I had the wrong. Yeah, I had the wrong link.
Yeah.
Sorry.
This is really, really depressing. He was in Montreal making an announcement, and then about internet partner violence and tougher penalties for intimate partner violence. Again, sort of a bit of a mandatory minimum thing. They're not necessarily bad policies and whatnot that he's that he's introducing here, but it could be following a similar unconstitutional model that has been proved before and has failed before in courts. But he was there with advocates from two groups. Advocates, not from two groups, advocates who were survivors of intimate partner violence themselves, and thanked them for sharing their stories. And they pledged to create a new criminal offense of assaulting an intimate partner and pass a law to require the strictest possible bail conditions for anyone accused of intimate partner violence. That would include, Poilièvre said, GPS ankle bracelet monitoring for those who are allowed out on bail. The Conservatives are also pledging that the murder of an intimate partner or a child would be treated as first-degree murder. So there has been no specific plan unveiled on the part of Liberals or the NDP on this issue yet. So that will probably come later. So he's first out of the gate with this one. New Democrat candidate Lauren Collins, who's seeking re-election in the BC riding of Victoria, brought forward a private member's bill in Parliament in 2023 to criminalize coercive behavior. We mentioned that on the show too when that came along. Bill C 332, which aims to amend the criminal code, criminalizing conduct that uses, attempts, or to use. Sorry, let's try that again. Bill C 332, which aims to amend the criminal code, criminalizing conduct that uses, attempts to use, or threatens to use, quote, violence against certain persons, coercing or attempting to coerce the intimate partner to engage in sexual activity, passed its final reading in the House of Commons after a unanimous vote in June 2024. So it did pass unanimously. Meanwhile, the Liberal government under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had also taken steps to tackle crime and intimate partner violence, most recently barring individuals who are convicted of an offense in which violence was used, threatened, or attempted against their intimate partner or any member of their family from getting a firearm license. That policy came into effect on Friday. The Liberals also implemented a national action plan to address gender-based violence in November 2022. So there have been some things that have been done. Now, on the day that Pierre announced that, Mr. Grizzly, if you would show the first image of that again, they had to get rid of a candidate named Simon Payette in the Montreal area, in the Berthier-Masquet-Dongé riding, because he made an accusation that the Liberal candidate Nathalie Provost was on social media essentially to self-aggrandize.
Yeah, I had shown it a few moments ago, but I'll bring it back up now. This is him, Simon Payette.
So, yeah. Now, if you look at the timestamps on the articles, Pierre Poilièvre's article from the Canadian Press about his pledge was at 2:43, and Conservatives' Drop Quebec candidate came out at 5:48. So I get the feeling that the announcement of tougher measures for intimate partner violence, some of which may be unconstitutional because, Conservatives tend to pass those laws to show that they're tough on crime and get all the benefit from it. And then the courts overturn them, and then that becomes a small story somewhere in the back of the paper, and nobody noticed this happened, and they still get all the benefit, but no real change has happened. It seems more that this announcement was back of the napkin, do it on that day because they knew they had to get rid of this guy. So let's say that we stand for stronger penalties for intimate partner violence. So that's the story of the day when it's announced a couple of hours later that this guy is dropped for, suggesting that a survivor of the Polytechnic shooting is in it for herself.
Pretty disgusting
again,
behavior.
Every accusation is a confession.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And I am pretty sure that Simon Payette was running not for himself. Because somebody who's campaigning not for himself will make those types of comments. Right? Accuse her of playing, quote, the victim game in her quest for stronger gun regulations. Provost said she was left speechless by some of the comments that tarnished the memory of her classmates subject to the worst mass murder of women in Canadian history. Quote, "I have no words to describe correctly how I feel," Provost said in an interview. "I cannot understand how those people who are running to be MPs can make such remarks and think that they will be able to represent Canadians in the House of Commons." Payette left a series of comments on Provost's Facebook page in French beginning Thursday night and into Friday, often taunting her to participate in a live debate with him. "Debate me, debate me, debate me." In one post he wrote he would look her, quote, straight in the eye as he tears up Bill C-21, the gun control law passed under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He said he would use the bill as toilet paper every time he uses the bathroom in Parliament. "It will be uncomfortable, but I will do it to bring justice to all the country's sport shooters." Uh-huh. Charming.
Yeah, very.
Charming. But conservatives do great vetting. It seems that they're vetting to get this into their party. It seems that they're vetting because they want to attract this. Because when they were leading in the polls and these people got nominated, they seemed to have no problem whatsoever with these people being part of their roster. Then things did not get better because, as we saw in that clip, we're talking about Brian Patterson, who Pierre Poilièvre just dismissed with the back of the hand, shoo, away, any concerns about conversion therapy because, well, he had denounced it years ago. How many years ago? Because it could just be 2 years ago, and that would qualify as years.
Mm-hmm.
Was it a 20 years ago denunciation? Well, there's some video out there of a show called The Cave that they used to do. There were, seems it was a series. We can only find episode 1 and episode 2 on the web now somewhere. Seems a lot of the other ones have been scrubbed. But in that video, youth pastor Brian Patterson is at church with his wife, and they're ministering to young people. And his wife is telling a story about a vision that she had. I don't know if she actually talks like she talks in there, or whether or not she's doing her best imitation of a teenager talking when she's telling the story. It doesn't sound like a grown-up talking to kids. It sounds like a grown-up trying to relate to kids by talking like kids do. And her vision, of course, as they often are, very gory. And then, of course, people, spirits or whatever it is in the demons or whatever, and angels were not doing the right thing, and then telling the kids that it's that's what the preaching is supposed to be about. It's like all of these people have to become these white lights that go into thing and pull people out from the darkness. It seems that there was some allegations that that church was supportive of conversion therapy, which, as we repeat, is torture. Patterson says that he is no longer a member, or he's taken leave from the church or something of the sort. But it seems that he's taken leave, but hasn't necessarily rescinded his affiliation totally yet with the church. He says that he was involved with nothing having to do with conversion therapy and does not support it. Became the mayor of Kingston. Apparently, the city of Kingston did establish a fund, $60,000, that was spent on helping people that may have been targeted by this. One of the people who was targeted by this have made claims about Patterson, saying, you know, he's still the same guy. I don't buy it. I don't believe it. But yeah, I mean, he renounced it years ago, and blah blah. It's like, yeah, that's apparently that's all the consideration we get.
Well,
the guy against whom the allegations are being made denounced it years ago, so therefore That's it. That's all. That's good enough for me.
Sure.
Great vetting. Because normally that would be, oh, really? That's a little concerning. I'll look into that and I'll get back to you. But no, he's all good. So that's him. And then he started getting called out for Aaron Gunn. Now, Aaron Gunn is pretty well known.
Yeah, he's been criticized over posts that stated the residential school system did not constitute genocide when we know that it did. He's a residential school, and he's not denying that residential schools were a thing and that they existed. He's denying what took place there, and we all know what took place. And here's a picture of the incel right here. I'm calling him an incel. I'm free to do that. I'm allowed to express my opinion. And there's a picture of him right there. Yeah, that's
this is not a good situation here. He has how do I put it? Aaron Gunn is rather a prolific writer and poster. He produces a lot of content.
Doesn't mean it's any good or accurate, but he produces a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Pigs produce a lot of shit.
Yeah, they do. Pierre Poilièvre is standing by this guy.
Of course he is.
So we have a situation now where there's this is Paul Chang all over again.
Mm-hmm.
He has an opportunity to denounce it. He won't. He's got exceptional vetting sticking with him. If he's going to do it, he needs to do it before 2 p.m. today because you can't replace people on the ballot. And in all the electoral districts where people were dumped, you might want to look at the name of the person replacing them in case, because at least for the Conservatives are concerned, I'm not confident in their vetting of their replacement candidates either. Now, Pierre Poilièvre, again, as if you will read that, Mr. Grizzly.
Canada's Aboriginals need to learn the value of hard work more than they need compensation for abuse suffered in residential schools. And he said that in June of 2008 on the very day that the apology and payout was the financial...
Just the apology.
It was just the apology that day?
Just the apology in the House of Commons.
From the Prime Minister, from then Prime Minister Stephen Harper. And he went on CFRA radio here in Ottawa, yes. 580 CFRA, which is a famous station in the Ottawa Valley. It's not as big as it once was, but at one time it was the #1 station in the country. It had a very big audience. In 2008, it still had a very big audience. Maybe less so today, but there are people who still listen to the radio, thankfully. And you can listen online as well. So, but yeah, this is his opinion of things. So if he asks Aaron Gunn to step down, shouldn't he himself step down for what he said in the past?
You read my mind, Mr. Grizzly. That's exactly where I was going with that. Of course, Pierre can't denounce Aaron Gunn for residential school denialism. Because Pierre himself is a denialist.
Yeah.
So he stood by him. Mr. Grizzly, I just sent you an additional link to something from Brandy Morai. She's absolutely excellent, exceptional. Wish we could have her on the show at some point talking about this issue because she's not going to be quiet about this, and rightfully so.
Did she not run for NDP leadership? Was she not in that? I can't remember now.
The Alberta one?
Yes,
Party?
Alberta NDP leadership.
No, that was Jody Stackhouse, I believe.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
I think.
Go ahead. Bring it on. Bring it on. Bring it on. Go ahead.
You didn't say they all look the same.
No. I can't remember everybody's name.
Tansei, hello. I'm speaking to you today, not just as a journalist, but as an Indigenous woman whose family has lived.
Okay, now I do remember her. Yes. I've seen her clips.
Incredibly good reporter.
Yes. I was mixing two people up. I apologize wholeheartedly.
lived with the generational trauma of residential schools. What Pierre Poilièvre is doing right now isn't just disturbing, it's dangerous. And we need to call it exactly what it is. I've seen Aaron Gunn's contempt for Indigenous rights firsthand. A few years ago at a Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion protest in Blue River, I watched as Gunn openly mocked and bullied Indigenous land defenders. He positioned himself firmly with non-Indigenous residents who were trying to intimidate those protecting their territories. He wasn't there to understand or report. He was there to silence Indigenous voices and champion those who would exploit the land at any cost. And this is the man Poilièvre is fiercely defending now. A candidate who has repeatedly dismissed the genocide of Indigenous peoples in Canada's residential schools. Let that sink in. Gunn claimed these institutions of horror and abuse were much maligned. He said Indigenous bands asked for residential schools. He's downplayed and distorted one of the darkest chapters of Canadian history.
You still stand by Aaron Gunn as your candidate on the North Island?
Yes, I do, and the letter is false. He has not denied the impact of residential schools. That's just misinformation. In fact, he has said that he wants to continue to condemn the residential schools and build stronger partnerships with First Nations people to unlock our resources so that we can produce incredible paychecks and opportunities for First Nations communities right across British Columbia.
And when confronted by the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, the BC First Nations Leadership Council, and dozens of elected officials demanding Gunn's removal, what did Poilièvre do? He dismissed them all. He called their concerns misinformation, and he turned his back on the truth. This isn't a minor political misstep. This is a man revealing exactly who he is and what kind of Canada he envisions. Every time I hear these dismissals of residential school horrors, I think of the children who never came home. I think of my own family members who survived but carried wounds that haven't healed for generations. If Poilièvre is willing to stand shoulder to shoulder with someone who attacks Indigenous sovereignty, denies genocide, and diminishes the trauma of survivors, then make no mistake about what kind of prime minister he would be. This is a man showing us he's comfortable erasing Indigenous pain when it's politically convenient, that he'll choose the politics of division over reconciliation every single time. We've worked too hard. We've come too far in facing our national truths to let a potential prime minister drag us backwards, to let him rewrite history while survivors are still sharing their stories, while communities are still searching for their children in unmarked graves. I want to be crystal clear. This isn't about partisan politics. This is about fundamental human dignity, about whether Canada continues to walk the path of truth and reconciliation, or whether we allow leaders to erase our history and silence Indigenous voices. The choice Poilièvre has made in this moment tells us everything we need to know about the choices he would make as Prime Minister. And that should terrify every Canadian who believes in justice, truth.
Damn straight. Let me go, I'm going to go grab my lighter to make sure the gaslight that Pierre tried to gaslight us with is still lit.
Yeah.
That's misinformation. No, it isn't.
No, it isn't. It isn't. And there's got some tweets here. Ottawa Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway to get a new Indigenous name. National Post writes, this is January 19th, 2023. Aaron Gunn. Why does the National Post, which claims to be Canada's conservative paper of record and employs great columnists like Rex and Tristan Hopper, etc., also publish regurgitated far-left historically inaccurate garbage from the Canadian press like this?
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh, and I'm sure, you don't have to look very far to find other examples for him. Got one here from Aaron Gunn, October 20th, 2020, responding to someone that said, Jesus, Brett, that legacy isn't being cancelled. It's being revealed for everything it represents, unless you don't think the Canadian genocide against Indigenous people was an issue. To which Aaron Gunn says, there was no genocide. Stop lying to people and read a book. The Holocaust was a genocide. Get off Twitter and learn more about the world.
Fucking idiot.
But he's not a denialist.
No. That's
no.
misinformation that he said those things that he said.
Absolutely. And, and it's not only about residential schools, right? I mean, get them started on Ukraine. I'm firmly opposed to Putin's heinous and illegal actions in Ukraine and oppression of the Russian people with Russia. I have held and articulated these views publicly for years. In early 2014, when I was still in my early 20s, I made foolish comments about Putin in Ukraine. I stopped holding those views a long time ago.
I just noticed the time, and I neglected to mention that I needed to leave at 8:30, and it's well past that now. I have an appointment I have to get to. But before I do, I want to share one quick clip, and then I'm out because I'm already late, and I have to send somebody a text to apologize. But I wanted to highlight this clip because we hadn't had a chance to get to it, and hopefully tomorrow we can talk about the housing program if we have time, sir.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to share this clip quickly. I don't know if enough people have seen this. It's important. It's important that you see this.
Very tough message control from the party, not only breaking with tradition in the sense that we are not...
Whoops, sorry. that was, I don't know what happened there. I tried to blow it up and it went too big. 1 second, my apologies. What the heck is going on here?
allowed to accompany the campaign, but also we've seen great control over the questions. We have not been allowed to ask any questions during the week that we've been with the Conservatives. Today we made an effort to get a question, and they told us that we could ask one, but that it had to be my colleague Tom Parry who asked the question. We responded that I was the one who had the question, and we preferred that I asked it. At that point, they took our question away and gave it to another outlet. We've also seen efforts to find out what reporters are going to ask, to pressure them to reveal what their question will be before the news conference. And of course, that's asked before the party decides who gets to ask a question. And we've also seen some fairly heavy-handed treatment by Conservative Party staffers, including some pushing and shoving, as we saw on the public wharf at Petty Harbour in Newfoundland. So it's been a difficult week. It's difficult to get the same level of accountability from the Poilièvre campaign as it has been from past Conservative campaigns or from the other parties.
I could only find that clip on Instagram. For some reason, I couldn't find it on the CBC website, but I'll put a link to the story about that in the chat quickly here. And yeah, I thought we should address that quickly. I don't know if you wanted to pour over that or not, sir, but I thought it was something. I thought it was something that needed to be addressed because it kind of demands that it should be addressed. I mean, that's not a light thing.
Nope, not at all. That was CBC journalist Evan Dyer, by the way. Widely known to be one of Canada's most professional and polite journalists.
Yes.
Basically having his question removed from him. We mentioned an article the other day in Petty Harbour, some of the activities in which Conservative staffers were engaging in, and also in Kingston, to keep reporters away from people. And we mentioned that we have a big problem with this because, well, that's directly interfering with the right of a Canadian to cast a formally and fully informed vote. Now, the reason for which people might not want Evan Dyer to actually have questions because Evan Dyer is the one that blew up the Indian government's claim that there was cocaine on the plane. So, on the Prime Minister's plane. So maybe they just don't like people who don't want to keep the narrative going.
Certainly seems like it.
Yeah.
But you need to also consider that, again, no reporters are allowed to travel with them. None. Oh, wait, no, Rebel News is. Rebel News is traveling with them.
So
he wrote, not being an actual news organization.
They themselves say so in court.
Yes.
Yes, and courts have ruled that they're right when they say they're not a news organization.
Which is why they don't get press pass to the Parliamentary Press Office, because they're not a news organization. They're not. They're shit disturbers. That's it.
Yep.
I really do have to go. I
please
got
do.
a meeting in 15. So
Okay.
thanks everybody for joining. I apologize. I meant to tell you at the top just before we started, and then I got sidetracked, and you know how life can be. I'll see you all tomorrow. And yeah, hopefully we can get to the housing, Mark Carney's housing. We've been trying to get to that for a few days, and it's just been.
Well, we've got a good reason to go because he did something over the course of the weekend that's just a brilliant strategy that brings it back and makes it a perfect 1-2 punch.
Oh,
So
yes.
we will do it.
It really is. All right. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.
Kiss. Yeah. So Evan Dyer actually wrote, I'm a senior reporter covering the Conservative campaign this week. We've seen unprecedented efforts at message control from the Poilièvre campaign that have broken with tradition in a number of ways. The CPC is the only party to bar media from its campaign plane and buses. The Stephen Harper, Andrew Scheer, and Aaron O'Toole campaigns all allowed media to travel with the leader and charge sometimes exorbitant amounts of money for the privilege. The other parties do the same and also charge. Poilièvre takes fewer questions than other leaders, a maximum of 4 per event, and insists on choosing which reporters are allowed to ask. After a week following the campaign, neither I nor our CBC colleague Tom Perry have been permitted to ask any questions. Sometimes CBC staffers try to get reporters to say what they plan to ask, a question a reporter is not supposed to answer. However, we have seen local media pressured into answering. Obviously, if a reporter declines, that could factor into the decision of who gets to ask questions at all. The decision on who asks questions is always last minute. A CPC staffer holds the microphone ready to pull it away. No follow-up questions are permitted, so the journalists aren't actually allowed to hold the own microphone. The CPC staffer has it, ask the question, and that way you don't get to ask a follow-up or contest if you don't get an answer that you don't like, or if somebody decides to go off on the other way and you say, excuse me, no, I want you to ask. That does not, there's no opportunity for that to happen. On occasion, CPC staffers have gotten physical with journalists, such as on the public wharf at Petty Harbour, Newfoundland and Labrador, where there was pushing and shoving. Today in Trois-Rivières, we asked to be allotted a question. Party staffers said yes, so long as was asked by my colleague Tom Perry. We responded that I would prefer to ask it. At that point, the party took away our question and gave it to another outlet. The difficulty of trying to keep up with a campaign that has its own chartered aircraft is a logistical problem that can be mitigated to some extent, but the extreme message control makes it all but impossible to bring the same level of accountability to the Poilièvre campaign that other campaigns are subject to. It also protects the campaign from having to answer tough questions and is a marked departure from previous Conservative campaigns I have covered. So that is Evan making that statement here. As far as we are concerned here on this podcast, Kits and Cubs, you know how we feel about anybody and anyone interfering with anybody's right to cast a fully informed vote, regardless of who they vote for. This is universal. Whether you hate watch us, whether you love watch us, this applies to everyone. In our opinion, this type of behavior is disqualifying because as taxpayers, we fund very generously via the political donation tax credit, which is like close to about 50%, this, but also the Elections Canada expense refunds. Any candidate, I believe, that runs in a campaign and has gets 5% of the vote has I'm not sure if it's all or a portion of their election expenses refunded by Elections Canada, which is the taxpayer again, right? We fund that, and then all the money that we put in to having Parliament operating, which the Conservatives, at least in the last session of Parliament, were using merely as a backdrop for memes and videos and ads, and not to actually do the people's work. With all that money that all of us, regardless of who we vote for, or regardless of even whether we vote, put into supporting those political parties, right? The deal is that in exchange, these parties have a duty to us as citizens to answer our questions and to never, ever, 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 ever do anything that would interfere with our right to cast a fully informed vote. This is not it. This behavior that we described as related to us by Evan Dyer is not that. So, it's not a sign of a confident party. It's not a sign of a confident leader. But again, a party that tries to make it such that you can't ask it questions when it campaigns is a party that's definitely not going to ask any questions once it governs. Right? These are people for whom you should not vote. If you are a conservative, and you're a conservative that has discernment and taste and standards, you can't find this acceptable. Inherent conservative philosophy is respect for institutions, wanting to build them up, strengthen them. This is a guy that wants to defund CBC. This is a guy that rails against the Canadian Human Rights Commission all the time. This is not a guy that wants to strengthen public institutions. This is a guy who wants to dismantle them. You cannot govern people effectively and from a place of good faith if you're not even interested in hearing their questions, let alone answering them. We have to vote on more than just the color of the party logo. Pierre Poilièvre literally put out a screed the other day saying, at some point during this election, we're going to have to talk about more than just Trump's and tariffs. Okay, I mean, the Bloc Québécois leader believes that too. But what are you bringing to the table for that? Those other discussions. This is, again, something with which I have a big problem, not showing up to debates, not answering journalist questions, pushing and shoving of journalists, intimidation of journalists, blocking third-party organizations from being able to spend on any advertising for like 6 months or a year prior to an election. All this type of everything that interferes with your ability to cast a fully informed vote or to be a full participant in the democratic process, we have an extreme problem with. And for us, those types of moves are just disqualifying. You just can't trust a party that will do that. So take our opinion with whatever grains of salt you want on this one. But just to let you know, that is something we believe in, and we believe in it, all parties equally. A party that just does that type of thing is disqualified as far as we're concerned. But yeah, it's not a great situation at the moment, unfortunately. So yes, back to Andrew Law and to Mr. Gunn. Yeah, Pierre believes that any claims that Gunn has been denying residential schools is misinformation. Clearly, it is not. Poilièvre says that Gunn wants to, quote, build stronger partnerships with First Nations peoples to unlock our resources so that we can produce incredible paychecks and opportunities for Indigenous communities across BC, which goes back to what I said on last week's show, I think it was on Friday, that the only time that Pierre actually cares about Indigenous people as people is when they also happen to support oil and gas projects. Other than that, you do not exist. You just don't, as he's proving here with Aaron Gunn here. In videos and statements posted on social media in 2019 and 2021, Gunn said Canada's residential school system did not constitute genocide and that the schools are, quote, much maligned. One of Gunn's posts on X, formerly known as Twitter, also stated that, quote, residential schools were asked for by Indigenous bands. They wanted them, apparently. Numerous First Nations leaders and groups, as well as municipal politicians in BC, have condemned Gunn's comments and called for his removal, including the Union of BC Indian Chiefs and the BC First Nations Leadership Council. And here's the CBC article here as a tweet here from Aaron Gunn responding to Penny Daphlos, who wrote on June 13th, 2021, quote, it is unlikely that any tribe or tribes would give trouble of a serious nature to the government whose members and children completely under government control. Quote, an important read from Jorge Barrera. And to that, he says, residential schools were asked for by Indigenous bands in Eastern Ontario when Johnny MacDonald was still a teenager. But hey, why let the truth get in the way of a good headline? Okay. Poilièvre said the Conservatives are the only party offering, quote, a bright future for First Nations by spurring resource development that will bring money and opportunities to communities. The Conservative leader said he would bring in, quote, a First Nations resource charge, allowing companies to pay taxes directly to communities so that they can have incredible prosperity. Again, in the face of news that there was genocides here. A statement from someone saying the government of Canada currently only recognizes 5 genocides in all of human history. This was in June 2019, and he lists them. And then Aaron Gunn says, why are the report authors and now Trudeau sensationalizing truly horrific events that need to be examined honestly and seriously with a loaded word like genocide that doesn't even remotely reflect the reality of what happened? So, I mean, clearly, but apparently he's not a denier. Just God. UBCIC Grand Chief Stuart Phillip called Gunn's post, quote, absolutely reprehensible and repugnant and completely devoid of any sense of compassion for Indigenous peoples who suffered enormously through the residential school experience. Quote, I don't think this man is fit for public office, whether it be federal or provincial or any office that allows him to continue to make these horrible statements. The comments have also drawn condemnation from other political parties, with NDP leader Jagmeet Singh saying on Sunday that the Tories should drop Gunn, period. Those comments are heinous, they're hurtful, and they're frankly clearly wrong. Gunn issued a statement on X on Thursday saying, quote, he has always been firm in recognizing the truly horrific events that transpired in residential schools, and any attempt to suggest otherwise is simply false. Yeah, I'm not... I don't really believe that statement from him. But yeah, he's got a long one. So after saying that to suggest otherwise is completely false, quote, I have never wavered in condemning these institutions of abuse where countless First Nations suffered at the hands of patronizing Liberal government. I have never wavered in condemning the theft of children from their families or the forced destruction of Indigenous language, culture, and traditions. Not only have I repeatedly denounced what happened at residential schools through my documentaries, I have also interviewed more than 24 Indigenous leaders on the importance of economic reconciliation with First Nations, while also highlighting the disproportionate impacts the addictions crisis has had on their communities. Leader Pierre Poilièvre explained it well at an AFN assembly last July, and then he puts a whole quote from Poilièvre in there. Quote, we must acknowledge the terrible mistakes of our past and learn from our history while celebrating Canada as the greatest country on earth. I look forward to working with great candidates such as former High Chief Ellis Ross to repeal the Liberals' radical anti-resource laws, to quickly greenlight good projects so First Nations and all Canadians bring home more powerful paychecks, once again showing that the only value that First Nations have to them are as people who need to say yes to a project. And that's it. Wow. It's just, this guy is just unbelievable. Pierre was not able at all to step away from him there. For those who are also affected by this, because triggered by this, just a reminder that a national 24-hour Indian residential school crisis line is available at 1-866-925-4419 for emotional crisis and referral services for survivors and those affected. And that there's mental health counseling and crisis support available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through the Hope for Wellness hotline at 1-855-242-3310 or by online chat. Again, I'll repeat those numbers. The Indian Residential School Crisis Line, 24 hours, 1-866-925-4419, and Hope for Wellness hotline at 1-855-242-3310. And you can also participate in that via an online chat if you go to hopeforwellness.ca, all in one word, hopeforwellness.ca, and you will see that there's a little chat button on the lower right-hand corner. You click on that, and hopefully you will be able to get some assistance. And so just wanted to get that information out there for you. So yeah, Pierre stands by the candidate. Again, like I say, not a surprise, considering what Pierre has said in the past about residential schools, seeming to be particularly upset that Canada had to pay for the tort that they caused financially and expecting to get value for money from a legal settlement, right? And then, of course, going off to say that, well, more than this settlement, Indigenous people just need to learn the value of hard work, with the, of course, suggestion under there that he or people like him would be the ones to teach Indigenous people what is hard work, which is a particularly ironic statement from Pierre Poilièvre, because though we have repeatedly and admittedly stated that Pierre Poilièvre does work hard and puts in the hours, he seems to put in the hours at all the wrong things and leaves a lot of flanks open. So even though he's a hard worker, he does seem to need a stronger work ethic on certain elements of his campaign. Who knows? Maybe we can send some Indigenous people over to help him with that. Just saying. But his overall record on Indigenous rights concerns advocates as well. This is from Samantha Schwintek of CBC. In an election ad, Conservative leader Pierre Poilièvre speaks to a bust of John A. Macdonald about the importance of developing national projects like the Canadian Pacific Railway. Quote, "What do you think, Prime Minister? Could you get that railway built today?" Poilièvre asks the bust. My God. Just this guy. It's only the most recent way Poilièvre has expressed his admiration for Canada's first Prime Minister, the man who got the railway built, but did it by displacing Indigenous peoples using starvation and detention, and who was also a key proponent of the residential school system. Métis lawyer Bruce McIver, a partner at First Peoples Law, says it's a worrying admiration. Quote, "Poilièvre dreams of being a 21st century John A. Macdonald, and we can see that in what he's said so far." Poilièvre has referenced Macdonald in multiple campaign speeches this election. Over the years, he has also made social media posts celebrating Macdonald's birthday, talked about the need for more statues of the former PM, and in 2020 and 2012, dressed up in period clothing to announce the renaming of an Ottawa building after Macdonald. In the 2.5 years since he became leader of the Conservative Party, Poilièvre's pitch to Indigenous voters has focused on resource development and economic reconciliation. But some Indigenous advocates say they are concerned about his record on issues like residential schools and Indigenous rights. The same day in 2008 that Stephen Harper made a historic apology to former students of the residential school system, Poilièvre told an Ottawa talk radio show survivors did not need more compensation, but instead required a better work ethic. The next day, he was called on in Parliament to make his own apology, which he did. During a 2021 debate over the bill to make Canadian laws consistent with the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, or UNDRIP as it has come to be known, Poilièvre said, quote, "I am very proud to say that I oppose this bill." He said that free, prior, and informed consent, a phrase that appears repeatedly in UNDRIP, quote, "would mean a veto for any First Nation that opposed a resource development project." He ultimately voted against the bill because oil matters more than people. When Poilièvre addressed the Assembly of First Nations for the first time in person last summer, Judy Wilson, former chief of the Nisconlith Indian Band and a former executive member of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, was one of Poilièvre's critics. In addition to her concerns about his lack of support for UNDRIP, Wilson pointed out that Poilièvre did not address missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, treaty rights, or climate change in his speech. She said she remains concerned about his position on UNDRIP and free and prior informed consent on issues affecting Indigenous peoples, their lands, and their communities. The issue of consent and consultation arose again when Poilièvre visited the Arctic in February. On the trip, he announced plans to create a new military base in Nunavut if a Conservative government is elected, but Premier PJ Akiaguk said Poilièvre had failed to consult with Northerners before the announcement. A caption for the Facebook ad featuring Poilièvre talking to the bus of Macdonald said that Conservatives, quote, "would honor the legacy of Sir John A. Macdonald and unite our country with a Canada First National Energy Corridor. The energy corridor, quote, will be pre-approved right away for pipelines, rail lines, power lines, and other resource infrastructure," Poilièvre said in the ad. McIver said he's worried about that. Quote, "The government can't come forward with proposals that have been predetermined," he said, pointing to a duty to consult Indigenous peoples affirmed by the Supreme Court. Quote, "So to hear the leader of the Conservative Party say that they intend to greenlight projects before they've gone through consultation with Indigenous peoples is very concerning." Along the same lines, Poilièvre has said he would grant permits for mining projects in Ontario's Ring of Fire within 6 months of being elected. Those rapid approvals, along with, quote, pre-approving energy corridors projects, quote, is completely contrary to the fundamental principles of constitutional law, McIver said. CBC Indigenous sent a list of questions to the Conservative campaign about Poilièvre's record and his current policies. A Conservative campaign spokesperson provided a statement which did not directly answer any of CBC Indigenous' questions, but said that Poilièvre has prioritized speaking with Indigenous leaders and community members to inform his campaign policies. Ooh, wow. Stand in awe of the leadership. The energy corridor was one of two policies highlighted by the spokesperson. The other policy was the First Nations Resource Charge, which was developed by the bipartisan First Nations Tax Commission and would allow First Nations to opt in to the chance to directly tax resource development projects on their lands. Chiyakatel Chief Derek Epp, who works for the First Nations Tax Commission, said the commission presented the policy to multiple parties. Quote, with the Conservatives endorsing this, yes, it sends an important signal that Canada is committed to Indigenous economic justice, he said. While the Conservatives have been the only ones to adopt it outright, Epp said that he's seen parts of it in Liberal policies as well. Quote, it's great that the Conservative government is championing this, but this isn't new, Epp said, adding that the idea has been around for well over a decade. When Conservatives announced the proposed policy in 2023, one critic called it, quote, a great idea for the 1990s. John Desjardins, Executive Director of the Indigenous Resource Network, a nonpartisan organization that promotes economic development, said he is pleased by the approach of the resource charge, especially as it respects First Nations autonomy. However, he said there are some concerns about how the policy will be applied. Quote, I think there's worry that the relationship between the community and industry will be lost and they'll lose their ability to negotiate and develop the things that matter to them, said Desjardins, who is Cree Métis. Since the policy was first announced, it has been unclear if it would allow nations to tax projects on their traditional territories or only on reserve lands. Epp said the resource tax should apply to traditional territories, calling that integral to the proposal. Desjardins said that if it only applied to reserves, quote, we'd certainly be less excited or less interested because its application would be far less impactful. While he looks forward to streamlining some of the bureaucratic processes and speeding up project timelines, Desjardins said the policy presents concerns about the potential for governments to discharge their responsibilities on consultation. Epp said he doesn't have any concerns about the government abdicating its obligations to First Nations. Quote, there's still the right to UNDRIP, he said. Desjardins said he's encouraged to see, quote, less government, less paternalism, less siphoning of the resources that can come directly to communities from the Conservative adoption of the resource tax policy. However, he said during a campaign that it's hard to tell what is real and what is rhetoric. Quote, will those promises be honored? Generally, I think that's our concern, Desjardins said. So you have this going on with Pierre. He will not step away from this gun guy. And not only that, but the Conservatives are still trying to tarnish everyone else with regard to this. And once again, they're trying to bring Carney's father into it. Now, there is a link here because his father was the principal at Joseph Burr Tyrrell School, a federal Indian day school in the Northwest Territories. So they're trying to do his father what they did to Chrystia Freeland's family, right? Relationships with Nazis and all that type of stuff. Well, they're here. Mark Carney's father did this, so therefore all the sins of the father necessarily transfer onto the son. It's a conservative position. Now, this is from Ian Frost of CBC News, and says, warning, the story contains outdated language and discusses physical and sexual abuse at residential schools. So again, please don't write with tons of complaints. We are admitting at the outset that there's outdated language used here. Liberal leader Mark Carney distanced himself Saturday from comments his late father made 60 years ago as an educator that were dismissive of some Indigenous people and his subsequent defense of residential schools in the later years of his life. Quote, I love my father, but I don't share those views, to be absolutely clear, Carney said at a campaign event in Oakville, Ontario. He was responding to a CBC Indigenous story that explored comments made by his father, Catholic educator Robert J. Carney, who died in 2009. And this was a story that appeared on April 3rd by Brett Forrester, titled Untangling Mark Carney's Father's Ties to Fort Smith, Northwest Territory Indian Day School. Historians say Robert Carney's legacy needs discussing in productive ways that don't harm survivors. So this is, basically, two stories on the same day. One about his father specifically, and then one about Carney's response. So let's see, what do we have here? Just make sure I got the right article here. There we go. During a 1965 CBC radio interview, the elder Carney spoke of a program at an Indian day school in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, where he was principal, quote, for culturally, oh God, I hate this word, retarded children. Culturally retarded is what he said. Oh my word. I know words were different in 1965, but oh my God. What a concept. Okay. And I know I'm looking at this with 2025 eyes. God, really? He defines such a child as one, quote, from a native background who, for various reasons, has not been in regular attendance in schools, or a student with a non-English speaking background who is behind in their studies. His views reflected the assimilationist attitudes commonplace in Canadian society at the time, particularly among educators, historian Jackson Pind told CBC Indigenous. In a 2019 settlement, the federal government acknowledged the Indian day school system divided children from their families, denied them their heritage, and subjected many to physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. Carney's father went on to hold various positions before becoming a university professor. In a 1991 Church Commission study, he interviewed 240 former residential school students, eventually reporting allegations of extreme physical abuse and 15 alleged instances of sexual abuse at 8 Western Arctic residential schools. He acknowledged the abuse in his report, saying these students had been, quote, scarred. But in later comments, he stressed a number of the interviewees had had positive experiences and the work of educators, quote, cannot be viewed as being wholly destructive or ill-intended. He later criticized Indigenous-led studies highlighting the negative effects of these schools as one-sided and imbalanced. On Saturday, Mark Carney said residential schools and Indian day schools, quote, are a long, painful part of our history. He said that he and the country has learned of, quote, the fundamental damage of residential schools and day schools to those who attended them and those who were their descendants. Advancing truth and reconciliation, he explained, was a core element in his brief tenure as Prime Minister prior to the election call. He said it would continue if his party is reelected. Quote, that is a fundamentally and deeply held personal commitment of mine. Historians say it's unclear if Robert Carney's views evolved after the report from the 1996 Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples was released. In 2006, the government reached a settlement with residential school students. Carney died 3 years later. So Mark Carney's rejection of those ideas and views seems to be clear and completely without equivocation. So hopefully that story will end there. But yes, definitely an attempt to stir the pot here. And of course, has to be addressed, has to be acknowledged. It is. Hopefully it ends here. Hopefully. But there's still no commitment. And then they tried to get him as well with regard to Brookfield, the former company the company with which he was involved before returning back to politics. And they are claiming here that with Brookfield, there was some support by the company of projects and stuff like that that breached Indigenous rights in 4 different countries. So Brazil, Canada, Colombia, and the US. This is by Brett Forrester, again, of CBC, this one, April 7th. Under Mark Carney's leadership, global investment firm Brookfield was accused of breaching Indigenous rights or harming the environment in at least 4 countries, CBC Indigenous has found. Carney, who was running for Prime Minister as Liberal leader, spent more than 4 years as Vice Chair and then Chair at Brookfield Asset Management, where he focused on green investing and renewable energy. During that period from 2020 to 2024, Brookfield businesses faced reports of serious human rights abuses in Brazil, Indigenous resistance in Colombia, a First Nations $100 million lawsuit in Ontario, and an environmental dispute in Maine. In Ontario, Maine, and Colombia, Brookfield owned hydroelectric dams, and one wind farm allegedly threatened Indigenous rights or damaged the environment. In Brazil, international NGO Global Witness accused Brookfield of and subsidiaries of deforestation and human rights violations, including the attempted eviction of an indigenous group and breach of anti-slave labor laws in 2021. While the multinational conglomerate denied any wrongdoing, the disputes have raised questions about the former central banker and UN climate action envoy's track record. Quote, I'm not trying to point a finger at him personally, but the company of Brookfield, no, is not measuring up to what they could do and should do, and now we are saying must do legally, said Toronto lawyer Kate Kempton. Kempton represents Mississauga First Nation in a lawsuit against Ontario and Brookfield Renewable. It was filed in 2022 over 4 dams on the Mississauga River on Lake Huron's north shore. It was filed as a last resort after, quote, Brookfield shut the door in our face when approached about a benefits sharing agreement, said Kempton. Carney advocates for more economic benefits, sharing agreements, and economic reconciliation in his book, Values. But Mississauga First Nations chief said they didn't experience that at all from Brookfield Renewable's Canadian firm, Evolugen. If anything, we've been ignored, Brent Niganombe told CBC Indigenous last month. The chief said the dams in question devastated the community by destroying fishing sites, flooding territory, and displacing people. While that was decades before Brookfield bought the dams in 2002, the First Nation alleges Brookfield benefited from prejudicial regulatory changes in 2019. Meanwhile, the dams continue to impact land, said Diganobi. Quote, there's still impacts with the fish. There was a spill at one of them that we didn't find out about till later, so it continues to create havoc on the environment. In Maine, conservation groups sued Brookfield Renewable in 2021. The groups alleged 4 dams on the Kennebec River were violating American federal law by repeatedly killing Atlantic salmon from an endangered population. The groups withdrew the claim in 2023, vowing to focus on the relicensing process instead, but they and local Wabanaki nations continue to advocate for the dam's removal. Failure to do so, quote, will jeopardize the future of our sustenance fishing heritage, said Chief Kirk Francis of the Penobscot Nation and Chief Clarissa Sabatis of the Holton Band of Maliseet in a March 5 news release. More than 4,000 kilometers away in northern Colombia, the Sogamoso Dam, owned by Brookfield's Columbia business Isagen, caused significant damage to ecosystems and local communities, according to a 2023 collaborative report by some 50 civil society groups. Meanwhile, the Wayuu people are resisting an Isagen wind farm in La Guarilla, Colombia's northernmost peninsula. Nación Wayuu, a local NGO, accuses Isagen of invading their ancestral territories and advancing the project without consent. In a statement, the Carney campaign declined to address the reports directly. Quote, Mr. Carney left his career in business and finance to run for office and is focused exclusively on serving the people of Canada, wrote Liberal spokesperson Jenna Gasepe. He is deeply committed to advancing reconciliation and upholding the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Questions about Brookfield should be sent directly to the firm, she added. Brookfield didn't respond to media requests, but it has previously denied the allegations. In Ontario, Brookfield is mounting a court defense against the Mississauga First Nation while the U.S. Federal Energy Regulator last month recommended the dams in Maine keep operating, provided Brookfield makes changes to allow endangered fish to pass through. In Colombia, Brookfield called the allegation that its dam was damaging the environment and local communities, quote, unfounded. The company denied the allegations about Brazil, telling Global Witness it, quote, unequivocally refutes the specific allegations of human rights abuses towards Indigenous tribes. There are positive stories, too. In Australia, Brookfield Properties released reconciliation action plans in 2022 and 2024. The firm reportedly pulled out of a controversial Australian gas project in 2021 amid local concerns about damage to culturally important ancient Indigenous petroglyphs. Evolugen gave 4.4 hectares of land back to the Michipicoten First Nation in Ontario in 2018 after elders raised concerns it would threaten an important spiritual and healing site. And in 2012, Brookfield Renewable gave about 40 hectares of land to the Hiawatha Institute for Indigenous Knowledge in New York State. So, and overall there. So, again, any attempt to try to get Carney involved, either through Brookfield or his father or whatnot. But again, what matters at the end of the day is what Carney he himself thinks and what it is he will commit to and what his personal pledge is on this matter. So far from Carney himself, we have seen no reason to doubt his commitment. But, of course, everybody comes to politics with the past. So there are things to be aware of course. But again, we always have to make the distinction that when you are working, because Pierre always likes to say, well, while he was the Prime Minister's advisor, while he was the Prime Minister's advisor, he was still, however, right? That didn't change. He was still the chair, the vice chair, or the chair at Brookfield Asset Management. And when he's acting in that capacity, his duty is his fiduciary duty to the shareholders, first and foremost. As advisor to the Prime Minister, his duty is to give his best possible advice, with no guarantee, of course, that the Prime Minister will take it, and that does not put him in government or make him a member of the government, as Pierre tries to keep on suggest that is the case. And again, he was an economic advisor to the Prime Minister, not the, as in the one and only, right? So we got to take these statements with a grain of salt. But here, yes, again, these are questions that can be brought up. These are questions that are definitely legitimate to ask other questions about. But from Carney himself, we do not seem to get the sense that he is engaged personally in some denialism, or that he does not support Indigenous peoples. But with Pierre, we actually do have lots of evidence on his personal track record of that being the case. So again, lots of work to attempt to deflect. And but what about the other guy? What about? But even if, we've got to make it clear, even if Carney was completely atrocious on Indigenous issues, that does not give Pierre a free pass from being atrocious on Indigenous issues. It doesn't cancel out. It just means that two people would be atrocious on Indigenous issues. And with regard to Carney, personally, this has not yet been established. Right? But for Pierre, it has long been established. So yeah, Pierre has a bit of an Indigenous issue here, sadly. Moving on, very briefly, today, British Columbia is going to be the big battleground. And the various leaders are going to be there with announcements. I think this one was already made, but Jagmeet Singh is promising national rent control if elected, which could be interesting, particularly in British Columbia. Pierre, of course, is going to be going there to make some fentanyl-related announcements. Of course, because everything has to be negative. Of course. So this is again Ian Froese. He's getting a lot of attention today. My guess would be, let's see, covers the Manitoba legislature and provincial politics for CBC News in Winnipeg. Okay, but clearly writing a lot about British Columbia here. So, according to him, a Conservative government would prevent any new supervised consumption sites from opening, while making it harder for existing sites to operate. He made this announcement in New Westminster, BC, to announce a Conservative government would divert funding from supervised consumption sites and commit $1 billion to fund addictions care for 50,000 people. $1 billion to fund addictions care for 50,000 people. That's a lot of money per person, and not a lot of people being served, because the homeless population in Ontario alone has been calculated at being just under 82,000. So, and of course, without saying that every homeless person has an addiction issue, because that is not the case, but there are a certain higher propensity for addiction issues among the houseless population, and funding addictions care for 50,000 people only is not going to be enough in any way, shape, or form to bring back our loved ones drug-free, as he claims he will do. Organizations. So yes, he said the money would develop new recovery options such as detox facilities, treatment centers, and sweat lodges, and support organizations with a proven record of success. I'm guessing 1 million does go further if you actually have to build the places where people will receive help first before you can do that. Organizations and interest groups contributing to and complicit in the distribution of high-powered opioids and the harm production programs. So he's calling it, oh my God, he's calling safe supply harm production programs instead of harm reduction programs. Will be cut off from federal funding, Poilièvre said. Quote, we've lost 50,000 people to overdoses. The least we can do in their honor is save 50,000 more. And this is another thing that Pierre Poilièvre does that's completely infuriating, as those one-for-one things. And he's making a lot of those announcements. You know, for every dollar in new spending, I will cut $1 in spending. That doesn't make sense. For every piece of red tape I'm going to put into place, I'm going to eliminate 2 pieces of red tape. And again, it doesn't work. It's not about quantity. It's about quality. Right? You need regulations for things. If you're going to eliminate 2 for every one you have, at some point, you're going to need a regulation, and there's going to be no more regulations that are worth cutting to cut. Same thing. If you have to reduce $1 in spending for every time you spend $1, well, let's say the roof caves in and you got to spend a lot of money on the roof. What, you don't eat for the rest of that year? These are just, they're stupid, simplistic, jingoistic policy platforms like this and policy planks that have no real way of operating in the real world. So this thing again as well, it's like, well, for every person that dies of an overdose, we're going to put one in a treatment center to save one. It's just dumb. He said Canada needs a different approach to recovery than supervised consumption sites, which he has decried, quote, as drug dens responsible for the current crisis. The Liberals and NDP have defended the sites for attending to overdoses and saving lives. Quote, let's be clear, these drug consumption sites do not work, Poilièvre said. He's lying. His government would prevent any new supervised consumption sites from being located within 500 meters of schools, daycares, playgrounds, parks, or seniors' homes, he pledged. Well, it seems that was a rule left, right, and center, and it keeps on being revealed that nobody was respecting them, whether it's been a liberal or a conservative government. So I'm not sure how he thinks that the same policy that has existed before and has not been followed or applied is going to work this time. Poilièvre is vowing to suspend the approval of new supervised consumption sites until, quote, clear evidence demonstrates they support recovery. All the evidence shows that they support recovery. During the Harper years, the Harper government financed the RCMP to try to come up with a report that came up with information suggesting that these sites were damaging or harmful or a blight on society in some way. And he did that because he could not find any credible scientific study anywhere that said that they weren't. So he tried to manufacture the data. There is no data that shows that they do not support recovery. All the data demonstrates that they do. But he wants more clear evidence. It's unclear what evidence the Conservatives would rely on, as Poilièvre has disagreed with harm reduction advocates who says there's proof facilities have saved lives. The Conservatives would also end the temporary exemption to the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act that authorized supervised consumption sites to open without requiring approval from the provincial government. However, Poilièvre stopped short of saying all facilities would close. Last summer, he vowed to remove all federal funding for prescribed alternative drug programs and redirect that money into drug treatment. On Sunday, Poilièvre said existing sites that aren't close to community gathering places could still operate so long as they follow the new oversight rules. Quote, there should be a small number, limited cases that are open where they welcome drug users in. They immediately offer them a path to recovery, give them a connection to a recovery program, offer them counseling on how to break their dependence and start their lives again. Yeah, that's not how it works. Because you have to build a relationship of trust first, and that doesn't happen as soon as you walk through the door. You build a relationship of trust over time. You let them know that they're safe there, that they won't be judged there. And then, during those interactions, you start to give them the information. Yes. And one day, hopefully when they are ready, because you have earned their trust, then they make use of that information. And you're there to act as a resource to help them get them to treatment. And hopefully, when they're ready, there's a treatment bed available. Right? And all the wraparound services that you need. So yeah, not great. The New Democrats will be in BC asking for the government, saying that his government under his leadership would only provide federal home building money to cities and towns that have strict rent controls. He said he has no qualms wading into rent control, a matter of provincial jurisdiction, because the housing shortage is a national crisis. Quote, I could look for excuses all day long, Singh said from Halifax, where the median rent of the oldest apartments increased by more than 40% in the last 4 years. Quote, I think a leader is not one who looks for excuses, it's someone who looks for solutions. We can absolutely find ways to protect people at the federal level. Under the NDP's plan, access to federal housing funding would be tied to rent controls and the banning of certain practices that turf people from their homes, such as fixed-term leases, rent evictions, and demevictions. These new conditions would be an extension of the stipulations placed on the Liberal government's Housing Accelerator Fund, which provides money to local governments that streamline land use planning and development approvals in order to build more homes. The NDP plans to keep that fund, while the Conservatives promise to cut it partially fund its promise to eliminate the GST from sales of new homes costing less than $1.3 million. Singh said national rent controls will ensure Ottawa isn't helping build homes that only address the lack of affordable options in the short term. Quote, why would we invest in building homes that are affordable if then in a couple of years those homes are no longer affordable? That would be a bad investment, he said. Some examples of rent control by provinces could include new rules on rent increases, bans on above guideline rent hikes, and changes to new unit exemptions, the party said in a news release. Singh also pledged to bring rent controls to federally regulated housing, such as military housing and homes on federally owned land, and to ban rent price fixing. His party's candidate in Halifax riding, His party's candidate in the Halifax riding is Lisa Roberts, a former Nova Scotia MLA who served as the NDP's housing critic. After she became an MLA in 2016, Roberts recalls for the first time seeing a person sleeping in a tent in the constituency. Rent controls will help to prevent those outcomes, she said. Quote, it's been really quite dramatic over the past 8 years how prevalent, visible, persistent homelessness has become. Liberal leader Mark Carney has no policy announcement scheduled on Sunday, but he's meeting with people in Victoria tonight. Tonight. The 9th, the 7th, yes. Earlier in the day, he spoke with United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer regarding the United States' unjustified global trade actions and the need to reinforce our trade relationships with reliable partners, according to a news release from the Prime Minister's office. All three leaders are in BC today to be able to deliver their things. Mr. Singh, over the course of the weekend, was in Atlantic Canada, delivering some promises, particularly pertaining to healthcare, promising that he would have every Canadian would have an actual family doctor, not just a nurse practitioner or an alternative service, but actual access to a family doctor, and with a whole bunch of other types of policies that would allow, for example, opening more residency positions for foreign trained doctors so that they can practice here, to train more local doctors from rural and underserved areas, and offering a 1% top up to the Canada Health Transfer to provinces and territories that sign up. So, and it looks overall like British Columbia in this election is going to be a big battleground for the parties. You understand that a lot of people keep on making the claim that by the time we get west of Ontario, the election is already decided. And it's often this is presented as in some way like, your votes don't count or whatnot, but it's really just population, and when we count them and when polling stations close because of time zones and all that type of stuff, right? I mean, everybody votes at the same time, and it's just as the results come in, well, often before results of certain areas in Canada start to come in, just because by the time you get into Ontario, you get to 172 seats. So, if one party miraculously, theoretically, won every seat, or hypothetically, I should say, won every seat possible that there is to win, by the time they'd start counting in Ontario, a majority government would be declared, right? It's just a function of where the seats are. But with regard to British Columbia, specifically, like right now, if you're looking at 338, the Liberals have get to about 158, 160 seats once they get through Ontario, and then they need to earn a couple more. So in this case, based on the numbers as they are now, British Columbia is going to be extremely important, maybe not to determine who wins or not, but the determination as to whether or not it will be a majority or minority government might not come in until results from British Columbia will be trickling in. So in this particular election, British Columbia might be quite important. So we might have a CBC decision desk that tell us that, yes, we do have at least a Liberal government, but whether it is a minority or majority might have to wait until late, until the evening, until results from British Columbia start coming in. So there, with regard to certain things, there were many more announcements on the weekend, and hopefully we'll get to them with that, because as Mr. Grizzly said, Mr. Carney made a very big announcement with regard to the trades, which fit in really well with his housing announcement that he made the other day for a good 1-2 punch here, and we'll talk about that. And he also had some policy about funding the CBC that we will get to as well, hopefully in an upcoming show, because we've already gone 2 hours and a half today, kids and cubs, we're closing in on. So there you go with that. Of course, we haven't talked tariffs or anything like that yet, but for those of you who are following the stock market and stuff, today looks like it will be a pretty bad day on the stock markets here. We've looked. A lot of people are thinking that it has the potential to be a black swan Monday. If we're looking at markets in Asia specifically, which had opened, I had been following them before going to bed to see how they were doing, and things were really bad just before coming on the show. Around like 5:17 a.m. this morning, the Nikkei was down nearly 8%. The Hang Seng was down over 13%. The Shanghai Composite was down 7%. The Shenzhen Composite was down nearly 10%. And Australia was down 4%. South Korea was down 5.5%. Taiwan down pretty much 10%. India down 3.5%. It's just all over. And then things weren't looking good for Europe as well. 5:47 in the morning. A lot of the European stocks were down between, not stocks, but the indices were down between 4.43% and 6.07%. So Switzerland was down 5.5%, France down 5.5%, Italy down 6%, Germany down 6%, the UK down 4.5%. So it could be a tough day. Right now, the markets have just opened. The TSX is already down 822, so that's another 3.5% here today. Let's see, what else do we have? If I'm going to look at the broader markets here, the Dow is down another nearly 1,500 points at the moment, for close to 4%. The S&P is down 4.3%, another 217 points, and the Nasdaq, which had been hit pretty hard, is down 4.5% today, down another about 700 points already at open. So not great at all. Let's take another look at a couple of other things for you kids and cubs. The Canadian dollar to the US still holding up pretty well at over 70 cents from what I can see. Just taking a look, 70.1 cents. So still not the big break way down below 70 that a lot of people were expecting. And then, of course, gold price is down another $18 an ounce today. Gold had been seen as a refuge, and it had gone up way over. It had gone up to like $3,160 an ounce, I think, but lost a lot in the last little bit. So yeah, a lot of it has gone down over the last little bit. Even the safe havens are being a little bit affected. So the flight to safety with gold with regard to this is not going very well. Of course, IQ 47 south of us again is denying that that this is a big problem. This is just one of these things that is going to happen, that it needs to happen. We need to have this pain in order to have such a big win later down the road. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. So we'll see. We'll see how bad it gets. The market openings are not as bad as had been predicted. The Dow was showing a predicted opening of down 1,500 to open, and that didn't actually hit that today. Fortunately, at the opening, but yeah, right now we're at 1,461, which is close to 1,500. So right at the open, it was at 37.89, and then has dropped a little bit more since then. All right. Let's see. Do I have anything else that I need to fit in today, or can I just end this today here? Oh, yes. Very briefly, of course, with all that type of stuff you may have heard over the course of the weekend, there were big hands-off rallies throughout the United States and many places around the world, including Europe and Canada. The U.S. Customs and Border Patrol started collecting the global 10% tariff as it came into effect on midnight on Saturday. The bigger tariffs on China and the EU will come into effect next week. China has already retaliated with 34% tariffs on all U.S. goods. Quote, "We've been building a rules-based trade system for 70 years, and it's all being torn down for no good reason. The tariffs," basically. Now, if you remember, Mr. Grizzly had showed us a little clip from the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where the teacher was talking about tariffs. He was talking about the Smoot-Hawley tariff bill that came around in the 1930s. And basically, they're saying here that the tariffs are about the size of the ones that everybody saw when that bill came out. And that bill just devastated the world's economy. But even compared to that, there was much less trade at that time, so this is completely without precedent. And this data comes from Dean Grossman, who's a professor of international economics at Princeton University. Dave Ives, who is an analyst. That is difficult to say. Who is an analyst? Dave Ives, who is an analyst with Wedbush Securities, a financial services firm in Los Angeles, says, "It's an economic Armageddon that was unleashed by Trump, and the tariff war has begun. We believe that this could set tech stocks and the tech industry in the U.S. back potentially a decade." Also, unfortunately, if anybody had thought, or particularly if the conservatives, if they had hoped that the announcement of those reciprocal, allegedly, tariffs and that Canada being off the list was going to be about the end of it for Trump, and that the rest of the campaign could be spent discussing the issues that Pierre would want to speak, probably not. Again, Ian Froese from CBC earning his keep over the last few days. Whoops, sorry. I knew that was wrong. That could not be right. So I figured, Ian Froese is writing about business issues now on top of that. It was, unfortunately, the copy paste that did not work very well. But here we go. Now I've got it. In case people are wondering, there's going to be more because, this is according to Akshay Kulkarni from CBC News. The U.S. is set to more than double the duty it charges on softwood lumber imports from Canada, with the planned new rate set at 34.45%, up from the previous 14.54%. While the preliminary determination was not immediately posted to the U.S. Federal Register, it was confirmed in statements from the BC Premier's office and the U.S. Lumber Coalition, a trade industry body. New softwood lumber duties were long feared amid the growing trade war between Canada and the U.S. and would be the latest blow to BC's beleaguered forestry industry, which has seen thousands of workers laid off over the last few years. BC Premier David Eby condemned the planned duty hike as, quote, an attack on forest workers and British Columbians in a statement on Saturday. Quote, "In Canada, the continued unjustified softwood lumber duties combined with additional U.S. tariffs and other trade actions have united Canadians," he wrote. Quote, we have friends and family in the United States who need Canadian lumber to build or rebuild their homes, and both Canadians and Americans need an end to this trade dispute. It would not surprise me if Mark Carney is in BC, partly to make an announcement as it pertains to that. Under the U.S. Tariff Act, the Department of Commerce determines whether goods are being sold at less than fair value or if they're benefiting from subsidies provided by foreign governments. In Canada, lumber-producing provinces set so-called stumpage fees for timber harvested from Crown land, a system that the U.S. producers forced to pay market rates consider an unfair subsidy. Indeed, the U.S. Lumber Coalition, which represents softwood lumber producers in that country, welcomed the planned spike in duties in a statement on Friday. Quote, these unfair trade practices are designed by Canada to maintain an artificially inflated U.S. market share for Canadian products and force U.S. companies to curtail production, thereby killing U.S. jobs, said Andrew Miller, the chairman of the coalition, in the statement. The BC Lumber Trade Council said in a statement that claims the BC system provides an unfair advantage are simply not supported by facts. Quote, our stumpage system is grounded in market principles with timber sold through open competitive auctions, said Kurt Nicodet, the president of the industry body. CBC News has reached out to Global Affairs Canada to find out if the federal government plans to take countermeasures against the planned hike in duties. In August 2024, when the duties were hiked from 8% to 11.54%, the federal government had indicated it would fight the tariffs at the U.S. Court of International Trade and at the World Trade Organization. EB said the BC government would work with the forest sector and the federal government to fight the duties through all avenues available to us. Quote, I'm meeting with the Prime Minister on Monday and I plan on raising this issue with him directly, the Premier said. BC workers and their families depend on the jobs that these tariffs are targeting, and we hope to see the same Team Canada approach to protecting them, just like with the automotive and steel industry jobs in Ontario and Quebec. The United States has long been the single largest market for BC lumber exports, representing over half the market for the approximately $10 billion industry. But amid a series of challenges for the province's forest industry, including a mountain pine beetle infestation that killed hundreds of thousands of trees, mills have been closing around the province in recent years, and major forestry companies are opening up new mills in the United States. In 2023, numbers from Statistics Canada showed BC had lost more than 40,000 forest sector jobs since the early 1990s. So we will be having that as well coming from BC today. All right, kids and cubs. That's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps all about us. We really love it when you do. Now, if you listen to us in podcast form and don't want to miss an episode, well, kids and cubs, you don't have to. Thanks to the Ray Girl, who has sponsored our pod page. That's podpage.com/TheTrueNorthEagerBeaver with a hyphen between each one of those words. And when you go there and click subscribe, when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, we'll get it directly to you. We're a little late in getting some of last week's shows out, but hopefully we'll be able to take care of that for you today or tomorrow as soon as possible. If you would like to support us in other ways, kids and cubs, well, we do have some ways for you to do that. For example, you can make like Kits Elaine and Kit Cassie and surf yourself on down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page. QR code just appeared there in the top left-hand corner if you are looking at us on YouTube right now. If you scan that or go to our page and click like, share, and subscribe, because we have 3 buttons there for you. Get freaky with them, eh? But if you like to smash, hey, we've got it for you. Click on them. It helps us with the algorithm very, very much. And we appreciate, of course, all of the attention that you give us, as have, I believe, we are at now 16,200, maybe even crossed over to 300. Let me take a check. Yes, 300. So thank you to all of you who are joining us during the election 45 coverage. We're glad that you're here, and we are very, very grateful to have you among us. Thanks. Now, if you would like to support us in yet other ways, kits and cubs, we do incur some financial costs to bring this show to you. Internet subscription, subscriptions to various media, software, and that type of stuff that help us produce and bring the show to you. And if you get a lot from the show. If our content resonates with you, if you find value in it, and you would like to support us and encourage us to do more, then we would appreciate a contribution to the Eager Beaver Lodge Emergency Hydration Fund via our coffee page. And that's the QR code that is now appearing in the top left-hand corner if you scan that, if you're watching live. But if you're not, it's coffee spelled ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver. And if you go there, you can make a donation to us by me, for example, congratulatory hot chocolate and say, add a beaver, or Mr. Grizzly, a congratulatory cup of coffee and say, add a grizzly. Because we really do appreciate all that you can do and all that you have been doing. And, we know that times are about to get tighter. So, whatever that you are able to contribute, again, is greatly appreciated. Now, please, kids and cubs, do know that if you are not able to contribute financially, that does not matter. You can still remain as a valued and cherished member of the best damn fam in all of podcasting, because we appreciate the gifts of your attention and participation, and we love to hear from you. truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is our email address. Please write to us and let us know what it is you think about the show, what you'd like to see. And also, if you do have political questions, we would love and be very happy to take our kid's suggestion to do a political Q&A. So if you've got some pressing political questions on your mind, write to truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, write about them, and we'll collect them together, and we can do a special episode on that, answering your questions. We would be very, very happy to do that, to have that interactive experience with you, kids and cubs. So truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. Please do send your questions there. And also, you can use that email address if you would like to make a 100% Canadian donation, going through Canadian banks and avoiding the CE tech bros like PayPal. Just a direct transfer from your bank to that address. Once again, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, and we get 100% of your donation. So it's a win-win-win. Now, there are other ways for you to communicate with us at TrueEager, at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge, and also on the Jitter. Technically, you can send your questions there too if you would like, but we were asking you for you to email them to us so that we can have them all in one place and make sure that we don't miss yours. So that's one place. Facebook, True North Eager Beaver. Again, that's our page there, our original home. Or if you happen to be watching with the Damn Fam here on YouTube, hey, right down here, the comment section, leave us a little something. All right? We do read everything. We're not able to get back to everyone, but everything you write to us does get factored in and does help make the show better. And we thank you for all of that very much. All right, let's see, kids and cubs, what else have we got for you? Oh, I guess I have to do the because democracy is something that you do part. That would be very, very, very helpful. I'm actually going to leave the coffee donation up there for a little while longer for those of you who may want to have some time to get to it. Because democracy is something that you do, please remember that there's a Quebec Liberal leadership race going on, and then there's a Manitoba PC leadership race going on too. So stay involved with that. With regard to this federal election, again, Elections Canada is still looking for some poll workers. Elections.ca, these are paid positions. So if you're looking to earn a little extra money, please do put your name there. And it's a wonderful experience. It's almost not like, it is hard work, but it's almost not like work, because when you see people come in and wanting to exercise their franchise, or people were concerned, oh my God, I don't think I'll be able to vote. Say, don't worry. And you've got the solution. You can help them. It really is good for the soul. I do recommend that everybody do it at least once in their life, whether it be federal, provincial, anyone. Just work a polling station at one point. And now remember, work a polling station, working a poll is completely different. Of course, we have great appreciation and admiration for those who can do either or both. But yes, please do know that you can vote early at any returning office right away. And early voting, I believe, is April 16th to the 21st. And then there are other ways to vote as well. Mail-in vote. Make sure that you order yours if you're looking to vote that way. But there are plenty of ways. Remember, if you're a student, you can vote on campus or at home. And when you vote, you can vote either in the district in which your campus is located, or where your home district is So you can make that choice, but you do not have to travel all the way back home, particularly during this time, exams and whatnot, to be able to cast your vote. You will be able to do it on campus. Okay. And there will be special voting days for people who are incarcerated or in short-term hospital stays and that type of stuff. There will be votes for you and special dates and provisions made for you as well. Okay. Let's see. What else do I have for you? That's the democracy. I guess I have to come up with some words of wisdom. Kids and cubs. I'm going to take some inspiration here from the problems that Mr. Poilièvre seems to have with stepping away from problematic candidates. And we didn't get through all of them, too. There's still some Andrew Lawton stuff that we'll get together. We'll talk about tomorrow. But apparently, he too has been indulging in use of Signal and trying to spin it as a virtue, of course. So there'll be more. But when you can't walk away, how would I put it? There are times where you do have to walk away. You just have to cut a loss at some point, right? People are talking about it here in the markets with trading. Are you going to sell? Are you going to stay in the market? You try to ride it out. Do you stay in and still collect your dividends or whatnot? Political parties. This person said something I object to, but I've supported this party all my life. I don't know. Friendships, every now and then, right? Something changes in a friendship and it's just not working for you anymore. And sometimes you got to walk away. Every now and then you got to walk away. And there are times where it's harder than others. Just know that if you happen to be in a situation right now where you're determining whether or not you need to walk away for something or stick with it, the important part here for you is the mirror test. When all is said and done, when it's just you, yourself, in a mirror, did you honor yourself? Did you choose you? At the end of the day, did you make a decision that reflects how it is you would like to see yourself, the person you aspire and wish and want to be? And if it is so, even though walking away will be painful, do realize, and I assure you of this, it can be painful, it can be hard, transitions are difficult, but it is always ultimately worth it at the end of the day if you choose yourself and you aim high, right? Give yourself the respect to which you believe you are entitled. And if that means walking away, make the choice. Because have all the feelings, but don't regret it. And don't feel ashamed. You should never regret it or feel ashamed when you choose you. All right? Okay. Well, I guess I have to tell myself, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock. And let's see if today I do well. I am getting a little better at it. All right, here we go. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, Kids and Cubs, just a little bit of an Easter egg for you before we go. Congratulations to Canada's men's curling team, who took the bronze medal at the World Championship, defeating China in the bronze medal match rather handily. There was a little bit of controversy with regard to Team China as to whether or not they were deliberately burning rocks that they thought were going to the wrong place. Burning a rock means when you the broom with which you're sweeping the rock makes contact with the rock. Usually, the rule is that that rock goes out of play. Often, if the rock is just about to stop or is about to stop, it's left to the non-offending team to determine whether or not they will keep the rock in play or not, that type of stuff. But the general rule is you burn a rock and the rock is taken out of play. So it seems that there were several incidences of burnt rocks by China that were either well, anyway, whatever was done with them, and the team from China said that they always follow the rules. It's starting to bring about a discussion as to whether or not we should bring instant replay to curling for that type of stuff, because right now the decision is entirely left pretty much to the non-offending team, and then there becomes like whether or not you're going to, like, for example, if a rock was just on the verge of stopping, technically you could take it out, but then it kind of makes it look like a bad sport. And that happened a little bit between China and Norway in the quarterfinal, which Norway did end up losing in an extra end. So, a little controversy there with regard to, so you might be hearing a little bit about that over the next couple of days. Also, it seems that the Washington Capitals forward Alex Ovechkin finally broke the NHL career goal record on Sunday when he scored his 895th career goal, breaking Wayne Gretzky's 26-year record, and it was Washington's only goal in a 4-1 loss to the New York Islanders. Again, one less Gretzky record doesn't make me unhappy, given the current context. However, Ovechkin is not a much better replacement if we're talking in terms of quality people and things in which they believe in public pronouncements they have made. So it's about 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. In that case, given it's Ovechkin and that type of stuff, I probably would take Gretzky over, but anyway. And in the Florida relays, Kits and Cubs, great news. Our gold medal winning 4x100 relay team from the Olympics once again performed admirably and took the gold at that event, doing Canada very, very, very proud. So there you go, Kits and Cubs. That's a bit of the extra bits I had for you. And with that, I am going to say, have a beaverific day. And I'll see you all tomorrow. And by the way, for those of you who missed it, we did have Double Beaver on Friday. So the second episode was Pierre's speech with regard to, oh my God, the topic of the speech just escaped me for a second. So I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. Oh yes, this is his response to the tariffs. Sorry, I apologize for that. His response to the tariffs that were delivered before the tariffs were actually announced as a disrespectful counter-programming to the Prime Minister of Canada, in which Pierre Poilièvre basically took Mark Carney's skin and tried it on for a day. It has to be seen, particularly a moment around minute 59 when he's asked a question by Brian Lilley, and it becomes the official moment, according to us, that Pierre's campaign jumped the shark. We showed it on the show, and we might bring it back on Tuesday's show, just as a little reminder for those who missed it. But if you weren't aware, we did have Double Beaver on Friday, so please, if you have the time, check out that episode as well. Okay, that's it for me today. Bye, everyone.